screamed the phrase at them over the Peter Mandelson scandal. Daughter of murdered MP Sir David Amess, Katie Amess, has been campaigning for a kinder discourse in politics. She told RBC politicians shouldn't be stoking up hatred.
Our politicians are meant to be people that we aspire to be like and that we look up to and we have respect for them and outstanding citizens. Unfortunately, just the discourse that is going on at the moment, it's all petty. It's all kind of gone back to like the playground.
The Chancellor appears to have changed her mind after telling LBC the student loan system is fair less than a month ago.
The student loan system is broken. We are doing things like bringing back maintenance grants. Is there more to do? Of course there is.
Rachel Reeves has been responding to growing concerns that graduates are struggling to pay them back due to interest rates. But the Chancellor says changes to the system are likely to come at the spring statement next week. Sir Keir Starmer says the government's tackling the cost of living crisis head-on following news the energy price cap is coming down. Ofgem says it will be cut by 7% from April, saving the average household £117 a year. And the BBC's ordered a fast-tracked investigation into its coverage of the BAFTAs. It was forced to apologise after a racial slur was broadcast rather than being cut out. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 125 points at 10,806. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.14. LBC weather, patchy rain and showers for most tonight. These will be more sparse for central and southern England, a low of 5 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Dale.
6 minutes past 9 is the time on LBC. Well, if you were listening earlier, Kemi Badenoch was with me for an hour, and she was asked a question by one of, I think it was a text question actually, on her comments at PMQs today about she had heard from Labour MPs that they were being described on the doorstep as the Pedo Defenders Party. I didn't see PMQs today live. I watched it just before the programme started. And it was sort of one of those moments where you thought to yourself, was that really a wise thing to do? And it is all very well to say, well, if people dish it out, they should expect to receive it back. But then you say, well, I'm not sure. Isn't the adult thing not to do that? Because it is true that before the last election, Labour put out online posters depicting Rishi Sunak, the then Prime Minister, as effectively a pedo sympathiser. And I remember saying at the time, I thought that politics had reached a new low when that happened. And there were a lot of Labour politicians, to be fair, who were deeply uncomfortable about it. But this today, I think, has taken it to a bit of a new level. So I want to gauge public reaction to this. Do you think Kemi Badenoch was right to do what she did? Was she right not to apologise? When I asked her about that earlier, 0345 6060 973. Well, Aggie Chambray joins us, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. She's going to take us through the events of the day and exactly what happened and why. Aggie, very good evening.
Good evening, Ian. Yeah, this row stemmed from today's Prime Minister's questions and this comment made by Kemi Badenoch.
The Prime Minister has the cheek to talk about my party being smaller. His party is smaller too, including one MP who was arrested for child sex offences. So perhaps before he gets on his high horse, he should ask why his backbenchers are saying that they're being called the Pedo Defenders Party. Yes.
Now, I think there was some shock in the House of Commons chamber that Kemi Badenoch had said this. But it is true that a Labour MP had brought this up at the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party meeting a few weeks ago. And this female Labour MP had told the Prime Minister that she faces abuse in the street, with people accusing her of being a member of a pedo protectors party. And I think that stemmed back from people I've spoken to the appointment of former Communications Chief Matthew Doyle and the appointment of Lord Mandelson as ambassador to the US too. But those comments from Kemi Badenoch you just heard have triggered a significant backlash today. And Ian, you read out a question posed by LBC listener Michael, who wanted to ask Kemi Badenoch if she thinks the language we just heard her use was appropriate or not.
What is the real problem is that the Labour Party has been out there making terrible decisions, appointing lots of inappropriate people who have no business whatsoever being in government or being in the House of Lords. They're the ones who should be apologising rather than complaining about the language.
Doesn't Lady Peter sympathise with it?
It wasn't my words. That was a Labour MP, a female Labour MP used that language. I was just saying that's what they're calling each other. So they're saying it, and then I'm being criticised for saying, here's what you're talking about.
Well, I think they're saying that they're being called that on the doorstep.
Yes, and I'm saying it too, because we're hearing it as well. That's what people are saying. Nobody would be calling them that if they'd held themselves to higher standards and done better. Right now, I'm still waiting for the Prime Minister to release the files of how he came to appoint Peter Mandelson, the man who kept that close relationship with a convicted paedophile. That's the real problem. So let's stop talking about how MPs might be victims, and let's talk about the real victims. That's what we need to talk about.
Do you believe they are paedo defenders?
Well, I think that that's what people are calling them.
What do you think?
Well, they've clearly been quite embarrassed by it, but they shouldn't have had to be dragged to that place.
So you don't personally think they are?
Well, no, the people who they've been defending are people like Peter Mandelson. I remember when I first raised the Peter Mandelson issue on the floor of the House, Keir Starmer said what a great guy he was, how he had full confidence in him. And then later on he claims that everybody was lying to him, whether it was Peter Mandelson or Matthew Doyle. The fact of the matter is that the Labour Party has a lot of questions to answer, and instead they are covering up how they came to appoint these people.
Ian, you then put some of her comments made to our colleague Andrew Marr earlier this evening. First, this is Labour MP Natalie Fleet, who herself a victim, having been groomed and raped while she was a teenage girl.
It's really upsetting. It just is really, really upsetting. These are people on our benches and across politics, in councils up and down the country, delivering leaflets up and down the country. There are hundreds of thousands of political activists, Labour and otherwise, that want to make the country a better place, and to just throw language like that around because it might get you some extra votes is just really disgusting. It's not the first time that I've been offended by Kemi Badenoch's language either. You know, when she had power to do something, she didn't. She'd never met with grooming victims, and she didn't mention grooming in the chamber when she was the Women and Equalities Minister and she had the power to do something about it. So the fact that she throws language around like that today is part of the problem.
And Ian, our LBC colleague Andrew Marr also heard from Katie Amis, who of course is the daughter of the murdered Conservative MP Sir David Amis.
It's very inflammatory language. I don't think we would have seen my dad branding terms like that around. It's tarnishing a whole party with a label. And it's not going to help the situation. It's just going to inflame and create more anger. And it's not the way that our politicians should be talking, unfortunately.
In the kind of heat and tumult of language, people will say all sorts of things. But do you think that Kemi should apologise for that use of language?
Yeah, I definitely think she should. And I really hope that she does, because that's not helping any situation.
So after that call from Katie Amis, would Kemi Badenoch say sorry for what she said today?
No, I will absolutely not apologise. I remember when Keir Starmer and the Labour Party were putting out posters saying Rishi Sunak was supporting paedophiles so that they wouldn't go to prison. Okay? So these people know how to dish it, but they don't want to take it. And that wasn't on the floor of the House in response to something. It was completely unwarranted. Rishi had done no such thing. They thought it was fair game. What people like Natalie are doing now is trying to use the cover of language to excuse the fact that people are very angry with them. Well, if she's upset about the language, she should go and speak to the female Labour MP who first said that, or the people on the doorstep who are saying that. I'm merely reflecting that people are saying this. I'm not calling them pedo defenders. I'm merely saying that even they are saying they're being called that, and saying that the language I'm using is disgusting when I'm just merely pointing out a fact. This is shroud waving. They did not care when they were doing it to other people. And quite frankly, this is a woman who voted against the grooming gang inquiry, saying that I didn't use my power. She didn't use her vote. Do not feel sorry for Labour MPs. Do not feel sorry for them. They are feeling sorry for themselves because they're having a terrible time. They're being banned from pubs. People are rude to them because they are not delivering for this country. Feel sorry for the people who are losing their jobs because they brought in the jobs tax. Feel sorry for the farmers. Feel sorry for the veterans. You don't need to feel sorry for Labour MPs. They brought this on themselves, and if they had any sense, they would be pressuring the Prime Minister to release the files rather than covering it up.
That was Kemi Badenoch there speaking to you, Ian, in that hour-long phone-in. Now, I think her comments have caused shock in some quarters, in the Conservative Party too. But Kemi Badenoch, listening to her there, she clearly does not regret that language. And I think there is a tactic in politics where you can use language that can sometimes shock, and repeating this claim and then refusing to say whether or not she also agreed with that language. And I mean, the conversation now is, about sort of linking Labour to that pedo protector language, even if Labour very much deny that. And I think that has then made things potentially more difficult for the Labour Party, although, as you heard there from people like Natalie Fleet, there are lots of people who are very, very angry about it.
I don't think that Kemi Badenoch is going to backtrack on this one iota. I'd certainly got the impression from her answers there that she has no intention of doing so, even if it means that she does upset some people within her own party who were outraged by what Labour called Rishi Sunak. And if you're going to be consistent, if you criticise that, you've got to criticise this.
I think that's right, Ian, but I think Kemi Badenoch is doing a reasonably good job at the moment of distancing herself from what has gone before and sort of drawing that line. So I suppose she could say that, she didn't have anything to do with that and she wasn't shocked by that at the time. But I think she's also managing to say things that might upset people in her party and actually doing quite well out of it. So I don't think, listening to her answers to you, I don't think she's going to be particularly upset by people in her party being angry about it, and I think she probably will have felt that actually PMQs went pretty well.
I suppose the other point, a wider point, is that we often talk about the quality of debate, the quality of public discourse online. This doesn't really sort of make it just means that the political discourse is demeaned, I suppose, by these kind of exchanges. But then if you watch PM, obviously you do watch PMQs every week. But, I mean, in no question today did the Prime Minister make any attempt to answer what Kemi Badenoch was asking him. I mean, she asked him 3 questions about youth unemployment, and in each of his 3 answers, he didn't mention youth unemployment at all, just kept going on about 14 wasted years, Liz Truss, Liz Truss, Liz Truss. And, I mean, in some ways, I don't blame Kemi Badenoch for slightly losing a rag when she never, ever gets an answer from him.
But I think his strategy in PMQs, the Prime Minister's strategy in PMQs, is to attempt to remind people watching, whoever that might be, of the Conservative Party record. And it is, I think it is probably good and cleverish politics from Kemi Badenoch to talk about tuition fees and student loans that people are struggling with to change the Conservative Party policy. But of course, it was the coalition that brought this in. So people in the Labour Party feel it is effective and necessary for Keir Starmer to talk about the legacy. But also, as a viewer, it can be frustrating if he's not answering questions. But some of the questions is pretty impossible for him to answer without, changing his policy. For example, talking about, I think her first question was asking whether they would cut interest on student loans. Well, he can't really say yes or no to that, because if he says yes, that's a major policy decision that's going to cost the Treasury a huge amount of money. And if he says no, then, the answer to that would be why not? So he basically has to fabricate, which I'm not saying is a good strategy, but I think that is the current strategy for him during PMQs.
Okay, thank you. That's Avi Shangre, RBC's Deputy Political Editor. Right, we'll come to your calls next. Do you think Kemi Badenoch should apologise? Or do you think this is just the cut and thrust of political debate? PMQs, both leaders often go a bit over the top. Move along, nothing to see here. 0345 6060 973. It's 18 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Whether your dreams involve epic adventure, trying something you've never done before, or just some time to fully relax, you can bank on Lloyds to help make it happen. We've been asking listeners what their aspirations are for the year ahead to help create the ultimate prize packages to inspire that first step. Enter now for your chance to win one of 3 incredible experiences, thanks to Lloyds and the nation's aspirations. Choose the prize for you at lbc.co.uk.
I'm Natasha, and this is my NHS story. I went to the GP because I'd found a lump in my breast, and the GP referred me to a CDC centre. It was just really welcoming from the moment I arrived. To just be reassured all in one day was fantastic.
The government is opening new community diagnostic centres, with many already available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so the NHS can be there for all of us when we need it. Find your closest one at gov.uk/NHS Fit for the Future, available England-wide.
When you're smiling, when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Life feels better with a smile. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Modern, comfortable and affordable dentistry for all. See online for our price match promise. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
Ian Dale, call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
9 on LBC. This is a text here. Someone says, Kemi's pedo comments are totally inappropriate. Leaders of parties should set an example that encourages name-calling and critical thinking. Jonathan's in Farnham. Hi, Jonathan.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hi, not too bad. What would you like to say?
Well, I didn't have any strong opinion on whether or not she should apologise. I don't think she will. She's a bit self-assured. But ultimately, it is cheap politics that she's engaging in.
Does it make you less likely to support her in the election?
I don't think I'm a strong supporter of David either. I've been on the Conservatives since around 2016. Brexit, I suppose.
Do you have a sort of a reasonably open mind? Is there something that she could do or say to win you back? Or are you even listening to her at the moment? Because I think that's, over the last 6 months, I think she has got people listening to her in a way that they weren't before.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is playing into the hand of reform, I think. And that's working a lot in the polls I heard. I don't know.
Okay, thank you very much. Lulu says, all these dreadful politicians telling each other to apologise, and let's think of the poor victim survivors. Good God, apologies mean nothing if they are forced. I would like if just one of them could put a name to one victim who isn't Virginia Giuffre. It's a slightly weird way of looking at it, I suppose. And Sonia says, name-calling. Angela Rayner called Sunak a pint-sized loser. Has she apologised? Name-calling from either side is childish. She also called all Tory scum. I mean, I do think calling somebody a pedo or calling a party a pedo defender party, even if it wasn't her actually doing the calling, she was just reporting it. I think that is on a sort of different level to an insult like scum, however unpleasant that is. Grace is in Ealing. Grace,
hi. I think that people apologising is a good thing. It's a shame we don't see more of it in politics. I think we all need to apologise sometimes, and it's something that's difficult sometimes to do. But I think that more broadly, the way that the word is being thrown around kind of derogates from the severity of horror. And I think so often online one sees people using the word pedo just to insult anyone that they don't like. And the reality is that children and young people have been horrifically abused in a way that we can't begin to imagine and wouldn't want to imagine. And so to use it as a petty insult, as some people do, or to use it without much particular basis, I think is a bit insulting to children who have been hurt. And I'm not a fan of Starmer at all. One of the reasons I'm not is that he has cut aid programmes, including those that tackle FGM. So in my mind, I'm really annoyed about the impact that he has had on some very disadvantaged children in our world. But I don't think that people should just throw that word around so unseriously. And I think that when people do, they're kind of betraying the reality that they don't want to address their own flaws, although most people have never done anything as heinous as this. But I think we use this crime to derogate from our own issues because it's such a disgusting, heinous, weird thing, and so the word is just increasingly tossed about, and it's not edifying, and it's not helpful or respectful to the victims.
Well, that is true. What did you make of it when she said in that clip that we played earlier, these people know how to dish it out, but they don't know how to take it? Now, I mean, that is a reasonable thing to say, given what Labour said about Rishi Sunak a couple of years ago, I suppose. But isn't a political leader supposed to rise above these things?
I think they are, and I also think that I'm more concerned for the victims of this crime who are not being given enough respect or taken seriously enough when the word is just used as such a casual insult as it often is. I'm more worried about that than I am about the feelings of Starmer, let's say. Similarly, with regard to Rishi Sunak, I don't think that people should mock his height, not just because of Rishi Sunak himself, but because I don't think that people should mock other people's physical appearances, since members of the public who might feel sensitively about their height, not that anyone should have to, but I know that some people do, I think that it could be hurtful to them.
See, this is where I part company with you, and I think this is a generational divide, in that if we've really got to the point where we get sensitive about commenting on people's appearance or their height or whatever, I mean, seriously, haven't we got better things to worry about?
Well, I know personally how it feels to have these really irrational concerns about appearance. Even though I believe that appearance doesn't matter, I know that it can be difficult to get rid of anxiety about it. And I gather that some men feel a lack of self-esteem if they're not as tall as other men. I don't think that they should do, but I gather that that's an issue.
And then,
so I'd rather
when I was at school, I was far taller than virtually anybody else, and I was quite thin, believe it or not, in those days. And my nickname at school, or one of them, was Lanky. Now, did that upset me? Did that make me feel small? Did that make me feel anxious? Did it make me feel inferior? No, it was part of growing up. It was part of growing a thick skin.
I do think it's necessary for us to learn, and I did to some extent, to cope with bullying and to be less sensitive than I otherwise might have done. I completely get that, but I think it's good for us to aim to love our neighbours and even our political enemies. And I also think that if you are going to mock people's appearances, you're just committing the ad hominem fallacy. You're showing that you don't have a good argument against the person and their policies if you're attacking their physical appearance. And there will be some members of the public who could feel unnecessarily hurt if they have been really badly targeted for aspects of their appearance. And the thing about worrying about your appearance is it's not necessarily rational. I knew, for instance, in high school that I didn't need to lose weight, but I still irrationally felt preoccupied by it, and it led to all kinds of problems. So I get that appearance and being targeted towards appearance isn't something that we should be concerned about. You're completely right, we should grow thicker skins, but sometimes it's hard to erase those thoughts.
Yeah, but we are getting to a point, and I've had this with colleagues here, who most of the people I work with are a much younger generation. And sometimes I really find myself self-censoring. Other times I don't. And it's got to the point where if you make any comment on somebody's appearance, like even if it's somebody that we don't know or a celebrity, if I suddenly say, oh God, they've bulked up a bit, haven't they? Ian, you can't say that. Well, I'm sorry. I mean, are we really going to have to go through the rest of our lives not being able to make any comment in case somebody gets hurt by it?
I think it would depend on the context and things like that. I think it's quite different saying something in private to saying something in the House of Commons. But generally, I think that politicians and you yourself will often actually have more constructive, helpful arguments to make against policies or things that politicians have done, rather than addressing aspects of their appearances. But I wouldn't argue with you necessarily if you said something in a private setting. I think that's different to saying something in the House of Commons.
Grace, thank you very much indeed. Somebody says here, Ian, you're arguing against yourself. That's what I'm best at, frankly. James says, I'm sorry, Ian, it's disgusting. Of course you should apologise. It's the normalisation of terms and actions that's doing for society, I'm afraid. And the way she said pedo is honestly puerile and offensive. Make it cool with children and poorly educated. She knew exactly who she was appealing to. That's James. In Queensland. And here's another text which says, it's from Pauline. Ian, running big with Kemi pedo piece. Did Ian complain when Rishi was accused by Labour? Yes, I did. Absolutely I did. And I'm not convinced that this was the right thing for Kemi Badenoch to do. It was slightly different though. I mean, there are differences in that Labour had a deliberate campaign to paint Rishi Sunak as somebody who somehow, I can't even remember the context of it now, sympathised with paedophiles, which nobody, literally nobody in the country would have believed. And I remember thinking at the time, what is the point of this campaign? You're trying to smear somebody who most people, even if they disagree with his politics, would think was basically a decent person. And it was cruel and it was horrible. And they were actually saying that he was a pedo sympathiser. Kemi Badenoch didn't actually do that. She was quoting what Labour MPs were saying that they were being called on the doorstep. She actually wasn't calling them themselves pedo sympathisers. Now you might say I'm dancing on the head of a pin here, but there is a bit of a difference there, Pauline. I think if you think about it, you will agree. Take more of your calls in a minute. Do you think Kemi Badenoch should issue an apology? Because she made very clear on my programme earlier that she certainly had no intention of doing so. If you're listening to LBC, I'm Ian Dale, it's 9:30. Gerald Jackson is the news headlines.
The Met Police have apologised to the Commons Speaker for telling Lord Mandelson he had passed information on to police. Sir Lindsay Hoyle told MPs earlier that he had spoken to Scotland Yard prior to the former US ambassador's arrest. Kemi Badenoch told LBC no one would be calling Labour a pedo defenders party if they held themselves to a higher standard. The daughter of murdered MP Sir David Amos says the Conservative leader should apologise for her comments during PMQs. The Culture Secretary says she's spoken to the BBC Director General over the completely unacceptable racial slur that was broadcast during the BAFTAs. Tim Davie has ordered a fast-tracked investigation into why it wasn't edited out. LBC weather, patchy rain and showers for most tonight. Those will be more sparse for central and southern England, a low of 5 degrees.
This is LBC.
Some days it feels like your to-do list just won't quit. When life gets hectic, let Halfords take something off your plate. We're here when you need us, with trusted experts ready to help you tick off MOTs, servicing, tyre fitting and more. So your car's ready for whatever's ahead. So why put it off? Get in touch or drop in today. Book online at halfords.com or give your local Halfords garage a call and we'll sort it. So you can keep moving with confidence.
Across the country, thousands of drivers are feeling electric about switching to an EV. And here's why. They can go from London to Sheffield on a single charge that could cost around £1. They're ecstatic about that and the exhilarating feeling behind the wheel. Plus, with charging made simple at home, they're always ready for the drive ahead. I can see why they're into it. Switch to an EV and get that electric feeling. Cost and range dependent on tariffs, model and driving habits. For full details, visit gov.uk/clean energy.
When you're smiling,
Don't let missing teeth stop you smiling. At Banning Dental, our experts could restore your beautiful smile with premium dental implants. See online for our price match promise. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Keep on smiling.
keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
Get 3 months half price when you switch to an unlimited SIM with 3. That means quick streaming, faster downloads, and more money to spend on the things you love. Join the UK's fastest 5G network and get your unlimited SIM today. Buy now in store or c3.co.uk.
Unlimited 24-month life plan. Proof of switching required based on Ookla Speed Test Intelligence data 2H 2025. All rights reserved. Subject to credit checks and terms.
Ian Dale on LBC.
9:33 on LBC. We'll come back to your calls on Kemi Badenoch and whether she should apologise for her remarks about pedo-defending parties in PNQs today. But first, let's return to the vexed subject of the Chagos Islands. Chagos, as Donald Trump calls them. Because there's been a bit of a kerfuffle today because the Foreign Office Minister apparently misspoke when he said the UK was pausing legislation to hand over the Chagos Islands following criticism on the deal from Donald Trump. He had to be corrected later. A government spokesman said he misspoke. So let's try and get to the bottom of this. But before we do, let's hear what Hamish Faulkner actually said to MPs this afternoon.
There clearly has been a statement from the President of the United States more recently, which is very significant. And as I told the House, we are now discussing those concerns with the United States directly. We have a process going through Parliament in relation to the treaty. We will bring that back to Parliament at the appropriate time. We are pausing for discussions with our American
Ben Judah joins us, former advisor to David Lammy during his time as Foreign Secretary, who helped to negotiate the Chagos Islands deal. Ben, good to talk to you again. Now you've been released from the shackles of government.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Not at all. It's a pleasure. What are we to make of this?
I think that, what's happening right now is British diplomats are working really hard from London and in Washington with supporters of this deal within the American state, in the Pentagon, in the CIA, and in the State Department who want to make it happen. And the reason they want to make it happen on both sides, even though the politics of it are quite difficult, is because it really is very strongly in the US and the UK national interest. And I'm delighted to explain why.
Well, no, please do, because I think people have become so confused by this, not just about the details, but they don't understand why we would want to not only give away sovereignty at the Chagos Islands, but actually pay Mauritius over £30 billion to do so. I mean, Kemi Badenoch was here earlier, and she said that she had heard a rumour, though she wouldn't tell me who the rumour was from, that Donald Trump initially thought that we were receiving £30 billion for the sovereignty. Obviously, that's completely not what is happening. But why is it in Britain's interest to do this?
I fully understand that it seems odd and complicated, but geopolitics sometimes really is. And trust me, government ministers would not have pushed for this if it wasn't really in the national interest. First thing you need to understand is what's on this island in Diego Garcia. It's not just an airfield, it's not just any old base. There are capacities that the United States has built up there that Britain, because of history, gets to have access to that are absolutely crucial to British national security. And I wish I could tell you what they were. It would make things a lot easier, but they're under the Official Secrets Act for very good reason. And that I'm afraid I can't tell you any more about that. But once you know what they are, you fully understand the British deep state's logic, which is we've got to retain access to what is essentially an American thing at all costs.
So we have sovereignty now, so why not just keep them and we retain sovereignty?
So let me tell you a little bit of history, which is when the Americans decided they wanted to build these capacities, they looked around the world and they saw that there were some atolls in the middle of the Indian Ocean, which the UK was leading. They were far away from Mauritius, but the UK was administering them as part of a colony based in Mauritius. And the Americans went to the Brits, hold on, don't leave from these atolls. We want you to stay. We want you to carve it off from what's going to be Mauritius. We want you to remove the native population, the Chagossians, in their entirety. And we're going to build this super base with a super capacity that you'll never, ever, ever, ever be able to afford or build on your own. Britain negotiated with Mauritius a deal in which this became a British overseas territory, but with the coda that it would always return to Mauritius when it was, quote-unquote, no longer needed for defence reasons. Skip forward to the present, what worked for America then was no longer working for America by the time of the last Conservative government and then the Labour government got executed. That's because Britain's legal position internationally was Mauritius had run a successful campaign with the UN and international reports saying what happened to us, the manner in which decolonisation was illegal article and a binding ruling was in it. Now you're going to go, who cares about international law? Let's just ignore international law. But the real thing that these American hawks were worried about, the real sort of foes of China were worried about deep in the Pentagon, was there's not just one base on one island called Diego Garcia. There are about 1,000 atolls in a vast area. Now, if Mauritius walked away from a deal with the UK, it could, and pursued a binding judgment, then it could go on the open market and go to China, with all other countries in the world recognising those outer atolls as legally part of Mauritius, and go, hey China, why don't you come in, send your fishing fleet in for a little fish, to do some fish. And then before you know it, you've got the Chinese popping up like mushrooms with research stations and bases, and then the security of this super capacity and this super base is compromised. The American government, and this was coming from the sharp end of it, from the Pentagon, started to put a huge amount of pressure on first the Conservatives and then Labour to do the deal. And the British government realised that the Americans were so serious about this and not wanting the Chinese to have any hint of getting into those outer atolls, that the United States was actually contemplating doing a deal with Mauritius, cutting the UK out, which meant we would have lost access to all these super capacities, which, let me tell you, are crucial to British national security. And that is how we ended up pursuing a deal under David Cameron. It was David Cameron that began text-based negotiations.
Yeah, but he also stopped them, didn't he?
Well, he paused them, and then he looked for a way out, because the politics of this are very difficult, as we're seeing. He looked for every single legal and political way out, couldn't find one, and then started text-based negotiations. He was the first person to actually do it.
So we are where we are now, where apparently the legislation has been put on pause, but then we find, well, no, it hasn't. Where are we with the American government? Because Trump seems to have changed his mind about, if we accuse Keir Starmer of doing lots of U-turns, Donald Trump has done about 3 or 4 on this, let's face it. How can the British government get Trump on side on this? Because he just seems to sway with the wind.
Look, the whole story of the Chagos Island is a subset of our sort of problem with America, which is we're weak, we're incredibly dependent on these capacities that the Americans have on this island, which if we lost access to, would be a real blow to our national security. And that meant that we could be pushed towards a deal by the Democrats, played around with by the Republicans, and had to basically suck it up because of that dependency. That's the truth of it. The American deep state, the military, the spies, the kind of anti-China diplomats were so insistent that they didn't want the Chinese to have even a hint of getting in to those outer atolls, that they didn't want the Chinese having even a chance to flip Mauritius into its camp, that they worked really hard to make sure that Trump initially endorsed the deal. You can see, you can sort of Google or go on the State Department website, and you have all of them, from Marco Rubio to the heads of the military to the heads of the CIA, endorsing this deal and lavishing praise on it. What's happened is that the global right is playing politics, and the global right has worked out that they can humiliate the Prime Minister over it. They have, and they have convinced Trump that this is in his interest politically to back.
And also, we have Priti Patel, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, in Washington as we're speaking now, and I'm assuming that she is now arguing with the Trump administration that they should stick to their guns on this and not endorse the deal, which in many ways would be unprecedented for an opposition politician to do, to argue against their own country in a foreign capital.
I completely agree, and the mistake that Labour made when we came in was to think that we were still in an age of foreign policy, national unity and Western unity, where politics stopped at the water's edge. But actually we're in an age of foreign politics, where the global right is fighting a campaign on both sides of the Atlantic. Trump is keener to see himself in some ways as leader of the global right than sort of leader of the global West, and what is happening is deeply detrimental to UK and US national interests for the following reasons. The first is that we could well see Mauritius just walk away from the West. We could well see a binding judgment come down, which makes life really difficult. We could well see the Chinese popping up like mushrooms in the outer islands of the Chagos archipelago. That means that the UK would have to defend them to keep them out. We don't have the capacity to do that, to put a British frogman on every single island. If you tried to do it with the Royal Navy, you would quickly absorb 80% of the Royal Navy at a time. May I remind you that it's leading against Russia in the Mediterranean and in the North Atlantic. The Democrats and the US military had explicitly told us, this is your mess, we do not want to do this, hence why we were frightened that they would do a deal that cut us out of that super base with the Mauritians directly. And now, what are the global right proposing? Well, what they're proposing is something that's not really realist or realpolitik at all. They're proposing a deeply romantic vision of resettling Chagossians in those outer islands and then defending them. Now, these are atolls with no groundwater. These are atolls that only get rainwater, where you're going to need to have, if you go for this no-deal scenario, very heavy security presence from the US and the UK. And let's just imagine somehow that plays out at least for a while. The danger then, even if the Americans didn't do a deal with Mauritius cutting it out, is the Americans go, hey, wait a minute, this super capacity we're doing it here, let's just take it to Hawaii. What the hell are we doing here?
Is there also...
Anyway.
Is there another issue now? Was it this morning or yesterday? I read an article somewhere that the Maldive Islands were now asserting their sovereignty over the Chagos Islands and contesting Mauritian sovereignty.
Yeah, you don't look. The legal stuff is very complicated, but you don't need to particularly worry about that legal challenge, because that's not going to succeed. The legal challenge that you need to worry about is that the manner of the decolonisation was illegal. There was an advisory opinion in the ICJ, which, if Mauritius chooses to take us to court in the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea, means that it would win, because the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea had already done a ruling incorporating the ICJ advisory opinion in a previous ruling that actually happened complete. And then that can't rule on sovereignty per se, but it can rule on maritime boundaries, and that's how you get the problem with Chinese popping up in the outer islands that Mauritius chose to go in that direction. So look, it's really bad for UK national interests, and the global right have done this in sort of an unprecedented way, like breaking a sort of unspoken pact between the parties that both of us would, stick up for the interests of UK national security and follow the advice on matters of key national capacities from the intelligence services, because they saw a chance to humiliate the Prime Minister. And look, they've done it, but it's going to be really detrimental and really costly to UK and US national interests.
One final question, and we've gone on far longer than I was intending to, but I always find your perspectives on these things really interesting. It's got nothing to do with the Chagos Islands, but I was really surprised when you went in to be an advisor to the government after the election, because we talked a lot, particularly about the Russia-Ukraine war. You're a foreign policy expert. When you decided to take the job, I don't know what you were expecting it to be like. You've been out of it now for a few months. What did you learn about the way government, foreign policy works? What were you surprised by, and what were you impressed by?
Well, one of the things that I was really impressed by is the full story of what Britain has done to defend Ukraine has not been told. And again, it's under the terms of the Official Secrets Act for very good reason. It's a story that both parties have got a lot to be extremely proud about. Things that Boris did, things that Keir did, and there's a reason that the Kremlin hate the UK government. And I think that when the history of the 21st century is written with full information for historians, people are going to be astonished at the role that the UK played in stopping Russia, extinguishing Ukrainian independence. So the full extent of our role in standing up for Ukraine really sort of impressed me. One thing that I was, I guess, kind of surprised about, if you sit next to a foreign secretary or a prime minister, you see what other countries think of us. And I quickly realised that most countries in the rest of the world, including most in Europe, see us as one of only a handful of countries that is producing some of these technologies of the future. AI, biotech, quantum, fusion. They're desperate to do stuff with us. So that actually made me quite optimistic about aspects of the British future. The thing that made me less optimistic is that when Labour went in, the Labour Party, had a sort of conceited idea that the Tories were sort of being mean about the civil service, or sort of covering up their own impropriety with stories of civil service malfunction or government dysfunction. Actually, a lot of an agenda that, Dominic Cummings famously kicked off a discussion about is actually true, that a lot of our machinery of government doesn't work, is totally broken, and we've got a weird situation where we've got the most centralised country in the developed world with a super weak centre, with number 10 actually being a glorified private office that can't manage that power that's accrued in Westminster. So that was a bit of a shock, seeing that inefficiency with my own eyes.
Hope we'll talk soon. Thank you very much indeed, Ben, for coming on the programme tonight. That's Ben Judah, former advisor to David Lammy when he was Foreign Secretary. Right, we'll come back to your calls on Kemi Badenoch's remarks on the Prime Minister and the Labour Party in just a moment. We're asking whether you think she should apologise for them. It's 9:49.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
The Green Party wants to give illegal migrants an amnesty, plus a job, a home and use of the NHS. But does that sound like a good idea to you? Plus the stunning inside story of Peter Mandelson's arrest.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases, and that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. HolidayParkAdviceCentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
This time last year, Hassan was working in sales and spent his evenings gaming. Now, he's working as a prison officer.
You know what's going to happen? Stop it. Let's just go in there.
He's tackled cell fires, got through to some of the most challenging prisoners, and helped support their rehabilitation. He's done things he once thought he was never capable of. But he still loves his gaming. An extraordinary job done by someone like you. Search prison jobs now.
You want £1 million?
I'd love £1 million.
So you enter the birthday draw and you think of a way to spend £1 million.
I'd pay off my mortgage and my mum's mortgage.
It's your lucky day and you win the birthday draw. But you forget to pay off those mortgages.
Whoops.
Because you're on a cruise with lots of money.
Money cruise, baby!
Is it your lucky day? For your chance to win £1 million, just search the birthday draw and enter now. From Global and ITV. 18 plus UK only, no purchase necessary.
This year at Amazon, we're increasing the electric vehicles used for deliveries across Europe to over 10,000. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where babies are made a fuss of, where we deliver footballs for kids' kickabouts, and where they deliver the football straight into next door's garden. Can they have their ball back, please? We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep. Based on projected delivery service partner vehicles across the UK and EU by end of 2026.
1983 election, she's won a landslide second term.
Police have been deployed to disperse crowds as the poll tax riots escalate.
Credit crunch is continuing to spread from the USA.
Britain has left the European Union. I mean, the list goes on. Boris, Liz.
We've helped Britain invest through 45 years of change. That's why we're the UK's #1 investment and savings platform, trusted by 2 million people. Hargreaves Lansdowne, helping Britain invest for it all. Investment returns vary. For claim verification, visit hl.co.uk.
This is LBC with Ian Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:52 on LBC. You know, one of the great privileges of doing this job is that you get to speak to people like Ben Judah, people who actually know their, I nearly did a bad word then, stuff, shall we say. You may remember a couple of years ago we did a whole hour with him. He was based in New York at the time, and I don't like doing whole hours with people when they're remote, but he's just so impressive in what he knows about foreign policy, and I think he's actually a real loss to the government, actually, even though I mean, my instincts are this Che Gostil is really bad, but, I mean, you have to listen to somebody who was in the room in all the negotiations, and he's very good at challenging my own preconceptions, my own prejudices, and I think that's a good thing. Right, let's go back to your calls on Kemi Badenoch. If you were listening earlier, she refused to apologise for what she said in PMQs about the Pedo Defenders Party, which is what some voters are apparently calling Labour on the doorstep. It's being reported by, certainly a Labour MP, I don't know. But she's got a lot of flack for this. I wonder whether you think it's deserved. Alan's in Maidstone. Hello, Alan.
Hi, hi, Ian.
Hi, what would you like to say?
Well, I was speaking to a researcher. I myself am a victim of child sexual abuse, and I just find it very deplorable that a politician themselves, who's fancy themselves as being on the high horse, saying about, we should think about the victims, but didn't clearly think about what they were saying in PMQs as how other people might interpret what she's saying, and how she's just brandishing the words as if it's like playground banter. Which I myself, I work with young people, and some of them have more sense than to use that particular word themselves.
I guess
it's almost normalising the phrase as if it's a perfectly fine, nonchalant insult to brandish at people.
She would say she was just quoting somebody.
Well, she might have been quoting someone, but maybe she could have quoted it in a different way. Rather than word for word, she could have reworded it as her concerns about the things that people are saying about the Labour Party at the time.
And what about her argument, the Labour Party did this to Rishi Sunak, and so what's good for the goose is good for the gander?
Well, and I perfectly agree with her on that basis too, because quite frankly, both parties are bad as each other. And they both need to be maybe cleaning their act up and thinking about just focus on politics rather than name calling.
Because a lot of people who are texting in, I would say the broad consensus, there are exceptions to this, but a lot of people are saying, well, this just demeans politics even further, this kind of exchange. And if they want us being the electorate to turn out and vote, this is not exactly the way to go about it.
Well, I completely agree. I completely agree with that, because this is just another a long list of things where politics seems to be using slander and insults as a way to kind of get one-upmanship on each other, and then say, but I'm the one on the high horse here because our party have been called this, and then, it's the old argument, an eye for an eye for a tooth for a tooth. But that doesn't really work in politics, because, as you said, it's just further demeaning the value of our politics, and the general electorate just don't see any value in either party because they're both bad to each other. It's quite childish, really.
Alan, thank you very much indeed. Nick says, Kemi was only quoting someone else. What does the world come to when we can't even quote someone else in a grown-up adult conversation? What Kemi said was the truth. Perfect case of don't shoot the messenger. I couldn't agree with her more. She's only saying what thousands of people are thinking. She definitely should not apologise. She needs to stand her ground and stay strong. David in Surbiton, is that your view?
Well, if a cap fits, then let them wear it. If someone continues to associate with a convicted paedophile, they should be treated with a great deal of suspicion. They certainly shouldn't be given a high-ranking job like that. So absolutely.
Yeah, but is it right to tar the whole party with that brush?
Well, the party that gave this man the job, and I think that we shouldn't be treating people that associate with paedophiles in this kind of way, because otherwise it's seen as okay. I mean, could we not put the same accusation against the royal family, for example, with the millions of pounds that was paid off? This is the thing, that having Jimmy Savile around your house every Christmas. Surely, if you're associating with these types of people, it should be pointed out, because you should be treated with a great deal of suspicion if you are. Pointed out, what you're saying, that makes you wrong. No, if you're hanging around with convicted paedophiles, then you're the wrong one.
I think there was a slight difference with the Jimmy Savile example, where nobody knew at the time that he was a paedophile, whereas Peter Mandelson knew that Jeffrey Epstein had been convicted of child trafficking, i.e. a paedophile offence. David, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's just finish off with a text here from Wesley, who says, Kemi comes across as vile because she should have known better. She used her question to get even, and that was clear for all to see. She has an arrogance that comes across loud and clear. Well, thanks for all of the calls and messages this evening. I'm back tomorrow from 7. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Henry Riley, but right now, it's Ben Kentish.
Ian, thank you very much indeed. Hello there. A very, very good evening this Wednesday night. You're listening to Ben Kentish here on LBC. Tonight,
the truth about migration, it is a positive thing for this country. We need migration, we need fair and managed migration, and that's what will change this conversation.
Illegal immigrants would be given the right to stay in Britain under plans that have been drawn up by the Green Party, and more than that, they'd also get the right to work, to use the NHS for free, and be accommodated in a house or a flat. The Greens say that such a policy is popular and that they are proud to stand by it. Their opponents say it's stark raving mad and would leave Britain with open borders. But what do you make of this plan? Would it be a good idea to get illegal immigrants into work and into homes, or does it sound like nonsense to you?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global Newsroom at 10 o'clock, the Met Police has apologised to the Common Speaker for inadvertently revealing information during its investigation into Peter Mandelson. It's understood they told the former US Ambassador, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, passed on a tip-off prior to his arrest on Monday. Lord Mandelson's lawyers say it was prompted by the baseless suggestion he was planning to leave the country. Co-host of the newsagent's podcast, Emily Maitlis, has told LBC Sir Lindsay's comments are interesting given where he spent recess.
The plot thickens because Lindsay Hoyle was in the British Virgin Islands just last week for half-term, and he'd gone on official business, and we looked at the website and it confirms exactly all the people that he was meeting with, members of the administration, members of the British Virgin Islands government, the Attorney General as well. It is quite possible that amongst those names there is the source.
Peter Mandelson was detained on suspicion of passing sensitive information to Jeffrey Epstein while Business Secretary, which he denies. A Labour MP has told LBC Kemi Badenoch is putting activists at risk after claiming Labour is being called a pedo defenders party. It happened during an exchange between Sir Keir Starmer and the Conservative leader during Prime Minister's questions. It follows reports that female Labour MPs have told the Prime Minister that voters have screamed the phrase at them in the street. Labour MP for Bolsover, Natalie Fleet, told LBC the remarks degrade politics.
There are hundreds of thousands of political activists, Labour and otherwise, that want to make the country a better place. And to just throw language like that around because it might get you some extra votes is just really disgusting.
Kemi Badenoch has refused to apologise. The Chancellor says changes aimed at making the student loan system fairer are unlikely to come in the spring statement. Rachel Reeves has told LBC the system is broken less than a month after she defended it. Cuba's government says its forces have killed 4 people on a US-registered speedboat that entered its waters and opened fire on a patrol. Cuban authorities say the incident is under investigation to work out exactly what happened. And from April, people in England, Wales and Scotland will see a drop in their energy bills. The price cap is dropping by 7% from April, cutting about £117 off average bills. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 125 points at 10,806. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.14. LBC weather, patchy rain and showers for most tonight. Dry over central and southern England, a low of 5 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ben Kentish.
It's It's 2 minutes after 10. Hello there. A very, very good evening. Welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish here on LBC. Hope we find you very well tonight. Coming up.
Many are purchasing and consuming halal and kosher meat without their knowledge and without their agreement.
Some Tory MPs want to take action against kosher and halal ways of killing animals, but some of their very own colleagues call the proposal divisive. So is it time to crack down on methods that animal rights activists say are cruel, or is this an attack on religious freedoms? We'll look at that a little later. Plus,
what we need is more prosperous families, more prosperous communities. That leads to a more prosperous country.
Suggestions today that Reform UK could make it harder for people to get divorced. One of the party's own MPs has criticised laws that allow people to end their marriage without either of them necessarily being to blame. But does that sound like a good idea to you? We'll talk about that after 12. Plus, later this hour, the new stunning details behind the arrest of Peter Mandelson. Details to come.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. This is LBC.
But first tonight, and a very good evening to you, what do you make of this as an idea? Everybody currently claiming asylum in Britain, however they came to this country, should be given a job, a home, and allowed to use the NHS completely free from the minute they arrive in this country. They should also be given financial support in order to help them put down roots in Britain. And this should be applied to everybody currently claiming asylum here, including people, and as well as people, who have already had their asylum claims rejected. It would also be applied, presumably, to anybody else who manages to reach these shores, however they do it, and whatever right they do have legally to be here or not to be here. That proposal is the latest brainwave that has been drawn up by the Green Party under its new leader, Zach Berlansky. Because according to documents, internal documents seen by the Daily Mail, this is all part of the party's plan, as the Greens put it, to bring about a world without borders. Let me tell you what their policy paper on migration has to say, according to these leaked reports. They say this: the Green Party wants to see a world without borders. Until this happens, it will implement a fair and humane system of managed migration where people can move if they wish to do so. It goes on. The Green Party believes that migration is not a criminal offence under any circumstances. And here's what they plan to do as a result. And this is a direct quote from the Green Party document. The Green Party seeks to establish a system that recognises that all migrants are treated as citizens in waiting and therefore supports and encourages them to put down roots in their new home. All applicants will be provided with accommodation and financial support. Families will be accommodated in a house or a flat with exclusive use and without overcrowding. Single applicants would each have their own room. It continues. All applicants will be provided with free access to NHS facilities. That provision will remain as long as they are in the UK, even if their case is rejected. And all applicants of working age would be allowed to take up employment with no restriction as to occupation. Can I repeat that last bit? With no restriction as to occupation. So, failed asylum seekers working in schools, in nurseries, in the police, becoming MPs, working in hospitals as care workers, despite having no legal right previously, before the Greens gave them it, to live in this country. Is that something you like the sound of? Is that something you'd consider voting for, maybe? Is that maybe part of the sort of reason that the Greens have seen a surge in their support recently? Because you too want a world without borders? Because you too would like to see Britain introduce an amnesty for illegal migrants, in which they are given not just the right to stay here, but homes, good homes, not crowded homes, in which they are given jobs, in which they are given financial support and free use of the NHS and allowed to work in any job they like without restriction. Some estimates suggest that there are over 1 million people currently living in Britain illegally. The general consensus is somewhere between 700,000 and 800,000 is probably closer to the mark. All of whom, under the Greens' proposal, would get the right to stay here indefinitely, permanently, and the right to use public facilities and public resources and work in any job they choose. Why? because the Greens believe in a world without borders. What do you make of that, then? 03456060973 is the number for your thoughts on whether this is a good idea, something that you would like to see become a reality, or do you think this is stark raving, completely and utterly mad? Because, you know, I'm not a hardliner on immigration. I can see some of the logic in encouraging people who are already living here to work, rather than just sort of have them working in the illegal economy. But come on. All this would do is reward illegality. It would mean that people who were found to have no right to stay here were allowed to stay anyway. It would take resources away from people who have a far more legitimate claim to jobs and homes and use of the NHS than a lot of the people who would get it under this proposal and presumably, in a way, be prioritised. So I think it's it's nonsense. It's the politics of the nursery, this stuff. A world without borders, even if you think it sounds nice in theory. This party's got to wake up. They don't live in this sort of fantasy utopia where everyone parades around holding hands and singing Kumbaya. We live in a world where there are borders, where every country has borders, and if we become the only one that doesn't, well, a hell of a lot of people are going to come here to work in any job they choose under the Green Party proposal. Nonsense, if you ask me. Embarrassing, actually, I would say. Embarrassingly juvenile, infantile as a policy proposal. So ill thought through and sort of idealistic and naively idealistic is my view on it. But what about you? Am I missing something? Am I too quick to condemn? Is it actually worth more consideration? Or are you with me that it's a load of utter claptrap? 03456060973, that number once more. Text me tonight on 84850 or say, Alexa, send a comment to LBC. Let's talk about it just before I come to your calls with Jacqueline McKenzie, who is Head of Immigration and Asylum Law at Lee Day Solicitors. Jacqueline, good to have you on the programme. You heard my take on it. What's yours? Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. Well, it's a really complicated thing, and there's an election tomorrow, isn't there? So I don't really want to comment on a political party's policies that I've not read, because I haven't actually seen that anywhere, and I have been looking. What I have seen of the Green Party policy, and I know that generally Mr. Poladsky is an open borders person, and I'm not an open borders person. I certainly accept that a state has a right to manage its borders in the way it seems fit to protect people within it. But what I've seen is the sort of call for an amnesty of people who are in this country and undocumented, and that's a whole myriad of people. It also, it does, you're right, include people who have failed to get asylum, but it includes people who've overstayed on visas, students, people who got married and who got divorced. I mean, we've got a very interesting development that's about to happen with Syrians who were granted refugee status for 5 years. And now are being told that they were promised indefinite leave to remain at the end of 5 years, which is what happens when you have refugee status. And now they're being told, because it's safe in Syria, you may not get that. Now, there's, tens of thousands of them who've married people here, got children at school here. They're not going to go anywhere, are they? And is it really safe in Syria?
Jacqueline, what's the point of having rules? And what's the point of having a visa system or asylum criteria if, under the Greens' proposal, everybody who was found to not meet those criteria or to have broken those rules gets the right to stay anyway? So what's the point of having a system?
So we've had these before. We've had amnesties before. We had the legacy scheme in the sort of mid-2000, around 2008-9, right up to 2011, where people were undocumented, were granted some sort of status and were able to then fend for themselves and get their own housing. And if they were qualified, because people can't just get any job they choose, they'd still have to be qualified and go through DBS checks and all that sort of thing. So there's no risk of people becoming doctors who are doctors. You're right. We have to balance the practicality of this, because we've got people in society, and you're right about the figures. Low estimates say 500,000, high estimates say about 1 million people undocumented. Something has to happen. So there's a practicality. What do you do with them? The state is responsible for a lot of them at the moment through housing and benefits and so forth. These are people, and I represent some of them, who just desperately want to be able to work, and they can't work because they're undocumented.
Sorry, Jacqueline, are these people who are currently going through the asylum process and are waiting for their claims to be heard.
People going through the asylum process and people who have failed to get it and now are looking at whether they can make what's called a fresh claim or appeal further and that sort of thing. Now, so it would have to be a practical thing. Now, you are absolutely right that there are problems with all of this because you could end up with a pull factor. So it has to be qualified. You'd have to say you've got to have been in the country for a certain number of years. We're going to put a cap on it because, yes, it could open up avenues for people saying, well, we're you know, gosh, you know,
if only I can get there, even if I have no right to stay there, they'll let me stay. But just on the point about, you know, if people have been, I see the logic of saying, look, if you've been here 10 years illegally and you've built a lot, then we might as well let you stay. But the flip side of that is saying, well, if you've managed to spend 10 years breaking the law, Jacqueline, and evade the authorities for 10 years rather than just 2, then we will reward you for your lengthened period of criminal behaviour by letting you stay.
I mean, sadly, that is the case, and we have that at the moment. We have what's called 20-year rule, which if you've been in this country without any status for 20 years, you can apply to the Home Office under something called private life, and almost every person who applies under this route is successful, so long as you can prove you've been here for 20 years. Governments realise that these are practical measures. You get people into the workforce, you get a reduction in their reliance on the state and on benefits and so forth. And so it's a practical and sensible thing to do. And I think if that's what the Greens are talking about doing, then that's a sensible thing to do. But I think you're right that there needs to be caution about it so that it doesn't act as a pull factor and so that you don't have all the other problems that can come with something like this. But I think in terms of people walking into jobs and all that sort of thing, they're not going to be able to do that. They're still going to have to be qualified.
The Greens say that people will be able to sort of do whatever they want. So
I don't think I can't imagine the Greens have said that. They probably mean you'll be able to work.
Obviously they're not saying, well, if you just decide you want to be a doctor and you've got no medical training, you can walk into the NHS.
Yes, but that's what it implies, that you could do anything you like. It can't be that.
Of course, but I still think people will have concerns about somebody who is, say, a failed asylum seeker being able to, you know, walk into a job in a school or a nursery.
So people who fail asylum because the country might say, well, the British state might say, well, it's now safe for you to go back to Iran or Iraq or Eritrea or Syria.
Yes.
That's why you might have failed asylum, not because you're a criminal.
No, of course. I'm not in the criminals. I just think people will be uneasy.
So therefore, you can work in a school if you are qualified to work in a school.
Yeah, I think I would say you should have a right to work in a school if you're qualified and you have the right to be in this country. But we'll see what people think. Jacqueline, thank you very much for coming on. That's Jacqueline McKenzie, Head of Immigration and Asylum Law at Lee Day Solicitors. What do you make of the Green Party proposal? An amnesty for illegal migrants. Give them jobs, give them homes, give them use to the NHS, let them stay and contribute. That's how they would argue it. Let them contribute to this country. Does that sound like a good plan to you? 0345 6060 973. Your calls to come right after this, 10:15.
This is LBC.
With over 50 years' experience, at Fidelity, we believe there's a difference between investing and being invested. Investing is having access to guidance, tools, and expert insights. Being invested means feeling confident about your future. Investing is choosing from a wealth of investment options. Being invested means focusing on your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, be truly invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
All right, resistance up. Let's climb.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, my knee's playing up again.
Have you ever had it looked at?
No, but I've been doing a few stretches.
When my shoulder went, Benenden Health got me expert help. Showed me exactly where I was going wrong.
30 seconds, people.
Press play on your health with physiotherapy and much more. All for less than £16 per person per month. Search Benenden Health. Fee review periodically. T's and C's apply. Qualifying periods apply for some services, including physio. UK only. Visit benenden.co.uk.
Across the country, thousands of drivers are feeling electric about switching to an EV. And here's why. They can go from London to Sheffield on a single charge that could cost around £5. They're ecstatic about that and the exhilarating feeling behind the wheel. Plus, with charging made simple at home, they're always ready for the drive ahead. I can see why they're into it. Switch to an EV and get that electric feeling. Cost and range dependent on tariffs, model and driving habits. For full details, visit gov.uk/clean energy.
Ben Kentish on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
10:17 is the time. Let me come to your calls. Maybe you think I'm missing something. No, there is credit. There is some sense behind this Green Party proposal that I am struggling to see. Maria's calling from Staines tonight. Hi, Maria.
Hello. No, I think you might be right.
Oh, that would make a change.
I mean, I just don't. I feel like I can't bear kind of ridiculous far-right proposals, and here we are with ridiculous far-left proposals. I don't see how you can fund it. I think we've got a welfare bill that is astronomical and is not sustainable. We have young people that can't find jobs, not just young people, anyone. I'm midlife and I've been applying for jobs, 2 jobs a week for the past year, and I can't get a job. So where are these jobs going to miraculously come? It is a pull factor, of course it is, because, you know, people can sell it. There are criminal gangs trying to get people here because it's £1 million business.
And the people traffickers would have an absolute field day, Maria, wouldn't they? If the Green Party government, if they ever get there, turned around and basically said, all you need to do to get to Britain, and whether you have any right whatsoever to actually stay there, Zach Polanski will let you stay, and he'll give you a house, and he'll give you financial support, and he'll let you use the NHS from the minute that you set foot in Britain. I mean, the people traffickers are going to be they're going to be laughing all the way to the bank.
I know, they'll be making an absolute fortune, and that's it, because you are not helping a criminal activity at the end of the day. I know everyone wants to be, sympathetic to people's causes, absolutely, and I think the way to do that is that you have policies abroad that people can apply for asylum in this country, rather than people risking their lives and feeding a criminal activity. And this, to me, is just, you want to be good, but sometimes, being good is not the right solution. It's not, you've got to be called to be kind sometimes.
It's a no from Maria. Maria, lovely to talk to you. Thanks for getting in touch tonight. Let's see what Helen in Ipswich makes of this Green Party idea. Helen, hi.
Hi. I think we don't have to worry about a Green Party anymore. I think they've just cut their own goose.
What, because this policy alone will be so unpopular?
Absolutely. I mean, how can you just have people coming in that avoiding the visa system? You're putting them in a job without checks, without undocumented. You don't know who they are. You're going to let someone like that look after your mother in a care home?
There's no point having... I mean, it doesn't mean they're all criminals. It doesn't mean that, they're bad people. But what's the point of having a visa system? We say to people, right, here's the visa system, you apply. Okay, yes, you meet a certain criteria, so we'll give you a visa and let you stay. You, sir, or you, madam, don't meet the criteria, but we'll give you a visa and let you stay anyway. What's the point of the system?
It's very unfair. It's totally unfair to those people that are paying absolutely thousands of pounds to come properly, legally into this country. And, they've made the effort and everything else, and they're coming in the right way. And like you say, someone that just sneaks in the back of a lorry or in a boat.
Or just overstays there to get a visa for 2 years and decides they're going to stay for 20. What about, I don't know if you heard Jacqueline McKenzie, immigration lawyer, Helen there, saying, well, it does make some sense if people have been here a long time. Then we say that, realistically, you're already here, we're probably not going to end up deporting you. We'd rather have you working and contributing than just kind of working illegally and not paying tax. Is there something in that?
Well, we've done it, haven't we? I've worked for the Home Office for a long time in the past, and we've done that on 2 occasions, just given a complete amnesty to people that have been here.
So in the Greens' effects, there is some precedent.
In long stay, yes, not in just allowing people to come into the country and getting benefits and everything else.
Because ultimately, I get the logic that if you've been here a long time, then you're probably here anyway. You're here anyway. Let's get you into the system. But it is rewarding prolonged criminality, isn't it? If you choose to overstay your visa for 20 years, then why should you get rewarded? It just incentivises people to stay here illegally for even longer.
It does, and in fairness, the governments have all failed to bring in measures to ensure that we have an entry and exit system that measures when people are here and when they leave. And I know it was a difficult thing, and I know it was, it was talked about, bandied about for years. But until we actually do something concrete, and, people that don't exit when their visa ends, and we actually do go with enforcement and find them, I'm not saying this new barrage-based system where we send a team out or anything else, but we do have enforcement in the UK.
But it doesn't really work, does it? That's the point. So maybe there is some sense in what the Greens are saying, which is, look, unless we're going to go around and deport all these people, which just doesn't happen, they're here. Right? There's almost 1 million of them already here. Better to have them working and integrating, and where we know where they are and they're part of the system and they have to pay tax and so on, than have them here anyway and doing none of those things.
That's a different thing, Ben, talking about someone that's been here 10 or 20 years.
But even if they've been
encouraging new people... No, you can't do it after 2. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, the end of the system was over 10 years before.
But why does the length that they've been here make a difference? If you've been working illegally here for 3 years, or you've been working here illegally for 10 years, why is the time period so important?
It's going to be based on the fact that they've made a family life, and unfortunately... Like you say, if they've made a family life here...
You could do that in 4 years. You could do that in 2 years.
Yeah, which is why we get so many appeals, and which is why so many people are allowed to stay here. The problem with our immigration system is we're not stopping it at the borders.
Yep.
And we're allowing too many appeals. We pay for appeals, we pay for everything. The whole system is stacked in somebody's favour, someone seeking asylum or just coming here for whatever. The whole system is stacked in their favour because I don't think there's ever been real political will to stop it.
Appreciate the call. Thank you very much. Sebastian's on the line in Harrow. Lots of people getting in touch to say this is absolutely bonkers, Sebastian. What do you make of it? Evening.
Hi, good evening, Ben. This is absolutely bonkers, and it's ridiculous as a policy. If it's even a statement that's actually come out from anybody, it's schoolboyish, kind of let everybody in. It's just ridiculous. What you've got to do when you're forming a policy of any kind is you've got to have some norms that you're actually building again. If you have a norm of unwritten constitution, you've got people who live here who have paid through the nose for the NHS, the various services that we have, and you cannot just let anybody just come in and just ride roughshod over people who've been living here forever. It's just not right.
Well, they wouldn't necessarily get priority, Sebastian, but they would, under this Green proposal, they would be given accommodation, or they would be allowed to sort of apply for accommodation. They would be able to use the NHS for free, and they would be able to work. It's not saying they would go to the front of the queue for those things, but I guess the point you're making is that they would be competing for GP appointments, jobs, houses and so on with people who do have a legal right to be here and perhaps have lived here all their lives.
That is true, and they'd be competing. And the major point, I think, is that we just don't have the money, the resources, to be able to cope with this. What we should have been doing is not letting those valuable police numbers go right the way down to threadbare. I mean, what kind of policies led to that? Where the first duty of a government is to actually look after the people that are living here already. And how do you do that on a threadbare police force? You're expecting people to just behave themselves and that's it. No, how are you going to find these people that have come through after even 6 months?
But Sebastian, I mean, I'm just trying to sort of let's be generous just for a moment. Let's try and be generous to the Greens for a moment. I guess if Zach Polanski was here, and I'm not going to channel Zach Polanski because that would be a strange thing for me to do, but I think he would say, look, these people are already here, realistically, partly for the reasons you've just given about enforcement and policing and so on, there's no real prospect of these 800,000, 1 million people being removed. So they're going to stay here, whatever we do. Isn't it better to bring them into the tent and say, right, let's help you put down roots, as the Green puts it. Let's help you find work. Let's help you become part of our society, our own economy, than have them here anyway and not working and not contributing and not paying tax?
Well, my answer to that there is that as soon as you let people know that we have a policy such like, you'll get 1,000-fold people trying to come in and then land up on the shore.
Well, you could say it only applies to people who are already here, but then I guess people would take their chances on the fact that maybe there would be another amnesty in 5 or 10 years' time. You could backdate it so it didn't apply to people who arrive from, X date. It only applies if you've been here 2 years already, I suppose.
No, to anybody who comes into the country, they're confused enough anyway. And if you're going to add to the confusion by adding limits and exceptions and so on, there'll be many, many, many more appeals which you can't deal with because you don't have a judiciary. The
system's already overwhelmed. Can you imagine what this would do to them?
This is why it's a nonsense proposition.
The Greens say they're proud of it and they believe it would be very popular, Sebastian.
They are wrong. Absolutely wrong. Put me against any of these. Anybody, sorry, I need to say that way.
We're going to fight them.
Well, no, just explain why they're wrong.
I think a lot of people will be queuing up in front of you to do that, Sebastian. Thank you very much indeed, Sebastian in Harrow. We'd really like to hear from you if you disagree with all the calls so far and with me, that this is actually worth at least some attention, perhaps. Or maybe if you're already completely convinced by this idea for an amnesty for illegal migrants. Not just an amnesty. And that's the bit that gets me. If it was an amnesty for certain people who have been here a long time so they could get jobs and so on, I'd sort of see the logic. I'd have my issues with it, but I see the logic. But free use of the NHS, accommodation, financial support, that's the bit I just think, who's going to pay for this? And what message does it send to other people who are already trying to come to Britain illegally? It just says come on in, doesn't it? It says come on in. We have rules, but we don't enforce them, so, give it your best shot. Not thought through. Silly politics, I think. What about you? 0345 6060 973. More of your calls on that in a couple of minutes' time. Plus,
I'd like to confirm that upon receipt of information that I felt it was relevant, I passed this on to the Metropolitan Police in good faith, as is my duty and responsibility.
Lindsay Hoyle, Speaker of the House of Commons, confirming today that he did speak to police shortly before they arrested Peter Mandelson. What a stunning revelation. We'll bring you the full details with the LBC's Deputy Political Editor straight after news headlines at 10:30. Darren Jackson.
The Met Police have apologised to Sir Lindsay Hoyle for telling Lord Mandelson he'd passed on information to them. The Commons Speaker told MPs he'd spoken to Scotland Yard prior to the former US Ambassador's arrest on Monday. Kemi Badenoch told LBC she will absolutely not apologise for claiming Labour is being called a pedo defenders party during Prime Minister's questions. It's after reports female Labour MPs told Sir Keir Starmer voters had screamed the phrase at them over the Peter Mandelson scandal. And the Chancellor's told LBC the student loan system is broken less than a month after she claimed it was fair. But Rachel Reeves says any changes are unlikely to be announced in the spring statement. LBC weather, wet and windy tomorrow, blustery rain across western and northern areas, drier in the morning and staying mild, a high of 14 degrees.
LBC, coming up on Nick Ferrari at Breakfast.
Tomorrow morning with Nick Ferrari at Breakfast, Rachel Reeves backtracked massively on student loans, telling LBC the system is broken, a month after insisting it was fair. Nick will speak with a former student desperately trying to pay off their debt, and he'll ask, can we expect another Labour U-turn? Plus, Labour MP Kim Ledbetter is live on the show after the Welsh Parliament voted in favour of her assisted dying bill. All that and much more coming up. Nick Ferrari at Breakfast tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock, here on LBC.
Nick Ferrari at Breakfast. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC.
A Thameslink train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to skip traffic and glide to wherever you need to be, with headspace to focus on more important matters, like if that cloud is a starfish or sunflower. Fast journeys without the rush with great deals at ThameSlinkRailway.com. Terms apply.
It's not easy being a clamp stuck on the wheel of the one person on the street who didn't tax their car. Yeah, Graham at number 7, I'm talking about you. Bet the neighbourhood group chat is as well. Wish I had a group chat. Maybe I can chat to myself.
Hi, Clampy. How's it going?
Oh, great, Clampy. Being clamped to the only untaxed car for miles is so lonely.
Over 98% of drivers tax their vehicle on time. Tax it. Don't risk it. Visit gov.uk/DVLA/tax it.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group Clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, what you thought you were getting may not be what you ended up with. From unexpected site fee increases, running costs, a huge depreciation in value, many owners feel they've been missold. If you think this might be you, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive the compensation you're entitled to. Text ASSIST to 78900 to find out more. That's ASSIST to 78900.
1983 election, she's won a landslide second term.
Police have been deployed to disperse crowds as the poll tax riots escalate.
Credit crunch is continuing to spread from the USA.
Britain has left the European Union. I mean, this goes on. Boris, Liz...
We've helped Britain invest through 45 years of change. That's why we're the UK's #1 investment and savings platform, trusted by 2 million people. Hargreaves Lansdown, helping Britain invest for it all. Investment returns vary. For data verification, visit hl.co.uk.
This is LBC with Ben Kentish. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
10:34 the time. More on the quite stunning revelations about what happened in the lead up to the arrest of Peter Mandelson with Aggie Chambray in just a couple of minutes' time. First, this comes in from Philip on the text. The so-called Greens have just demonstrated they are nothing but a totally unelectable bunch of far-left clowns with no ideas and completely unfit for power. That's Philip's response to proposals for an amnesty to be offered to all illegal migrants. That's what the Greens want to see. People in this country claiming asylum, or even if they'd had their claim rejected, would have the right to use the NHS, to work, to stay, to be given housing and to be given financial support. Let's see what Rajiv in Richmond makes of it. Rajiv, Philip said this is a complete nonsense. It shows the Greens are unfit for power. What do you think, sir?
I actually don't think so. I think the Green Party is a forward-thinking party in United Kingdom. They know the problems of this country, which Labour and Conservatives have failed to recognise. You know, Labour and Conservative Party, they're like weeds in the ground that grow in your garden. You know, and you have to remove them. They're just like weeds. The Green Party has come up with something very, very important. And I will also say one thing very, very important. And that is that, you call them illegal migrants or whoever they are. If you bring them into the system, they will each contribute £5,000 each, minimum, to the exchequer, right? And so they will...
Where's that figure from, Roger?
Well, but if you make them legal, if you give them amnesty, you make them legal, they will contribute to the exchequer.
What would be the incentive for them to work if they already have been given financial support by Zach Polanski?
Financial support, if you're working, you don't need financial support.
But isn't it the other way around? You don't need to work if the Greens are giving you money.
No. Everybody, if they give an amnesty, they have to work. That has to be their condition. And there has to be another condition. Anyone who has been in this country for the last 5 years illegally, they should be given amnesty.
So we should reward the fact that they've stayed in this country for 5 years. We should reward them by letting them stay and giving them a job.
Listen, it is not a question of reward. America did that. And this
of course it's about reward, because the message that sends is, if you come here and if you manage to evade the police and the border force for 4 or 5 years, we will say, well done, you've managed it, 5 years in, here's your visa to stay. What sort of incentive does that send? What sort of message does that send?
Well, if you bring it to, look, these people who are illegal, who are living here, do you think they're going to go back? How much money this government is going to spend?
So are you saying just because we can't find a way to deport them, we might as well let them stay?
Well, Well, at least, if you bring these people into the streamline, they will be contributing something to the exchequer in terms of NHS, NHS and taxes and everything. They will become citizens like of this country. You think how much money it will cost this country to send 1 million people back to their country where they come from.
I can hear the economic case, but what about the principle? What about the ethical one here, Rajiv? What about all the people who did apply and did go through the legal process and did get the right to stay here legally? What message does it send to them if, having done all that and paid the fees, the thousands of pounds for the visas and so on, they watch their neighbour who's done none of that and has just come across the channel on a lorry or a boat get all the same privileges and the rights that they've got, having worked hard and done the right thing to get there?
You see, the thing is, when you talk about principle to me, you have to make sure that people cannot enter this country illegally.
Yes.
This government has to make sure invest.
But how is it fair to give people who have entered this country illegally exactly the same rights and benefits and entitlements to people who have come here legally? How is that fair, Andrew? How is that fair?
British people do not understand that these people who are staying here illegally, they do the job the British people will never.
Yeah, but answer my question. How is it fair to give them the same rights as people who have come here legally?
Well, you got a point.
It's not fair, is it? It's fundamentally completely unjust.
Sometimes, you have to put a bandage on a wound. These people are doing jobs which the British people will not do.
I hear what you're saying. I can hear the economic argument that if they're doing the jobs anyway and they're not documented, then it's better that they're doing the jobs officially and legally and they pay tax and they contribute. I see the economic benefits of this. It just strikes me as it's completely contrary to the rule of law, because we're basically saying to people, come here and abide by our laws, and if you do, we'll get the right to stay. But if you come here and you flout our laws, then you'll also get the right to stay. So where's the incentive to do the right thing? So I hear the kind of financial case you're making, Rajiv, but for me this is more deep, this is more fundamental. This is about rewarding people who do the right thing and not those who don't. Not those who break the law, especially those who will get rewarded under your proposal for people who have broken the law for the longest. Lovely to have you on. Thank you, Rajiv. Maybe you're with Rajiv. Maybe you see some sense in this too. 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you want to dispute what you just heard from Rajiv. Come back to that in a few minutes' time. Let's talk first, shall we, at 20 to 11, about the quite stunning revelation from House of Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle today, that he spoke to police about the prospect of Peter Mandelson fleeing this country shortly before Lord Mandelson was arrested on Monday. That was the announcement he made to the House of Commons a little earlier today. Aggie Schomburg, LBC's deputy political editor, joins me to talk about it. Aggie, good to have you with us tonight. Let's just touch on what Lindsay Hoyle had to say in Parliament today, and his quite stunning admission.
Indeed. So I have to take you back to Monday when Peter Mandelson, Lord Mandelson as he still is, was arrested. And this, I think, was confusing for a number of people, not least Lord Mandelson, Peter Mandelson, because he had a voluntary interview under caution in a couple of weeks' time. And it transpired the reason that he'd been arrested instead of being allowed to do this interview was because it seemed that the Met thought he was a flight risk. And that was because the Met had been given information that Peter Mandelson was about to flee to the British Virgin Islands. And lots of people were wondering who the source of this information was until the Times published the story just before Prime Minister's questions, and then Lindsay Hoyle made this statement in the chamber.
Order. Members will be aware of comments in the media regarding the arrest of Lord Mandelson. To prevent any inaccurate speculation, I'd like to confirm that upon receipt of information that I felt it was relevant, I passed this on to the Metropolitan Police in good faith, as is my duty and responsibility. It is regrettable this rapidly ended in the media, as this is a live investigation. Members will understand that it would not be appropriate to make any further comment. And I'd like to caution members from doing so.
Confirming that Times reporting, and that was partly that a local source had informed Lindsay Hoyle in the British Overseas Territory that the former ambassador planned to travel to the islands. And Lord Mandelson, telling friends at kind of, I think, 4 a.m. on Tuesday morning that the idea that he was about to flee to the British Virgin Islands, take up permanent residence abroad, leaving his husband, his family, home and his dog, I need hardly say complete fiction. And he said the question is who or what is behind this. Lindsay Hoyle, of course, admitting that he passed on that information. But how did that come out in the press? Well, the Met Police have now had to apologise to the Commons Speaker for inadvertently revealing that he was the source of information relating to Lord Mandelson's arrest. In that first statement that was given to friends of Peter Mandelson, it appeared that it was actually the Lord Speaker, Lord Forsyth. He denied any involvement, categorically said it wasn't anything to do with him. And of course it came out that it was in fact Sir Lindsay Hoyle. But an extraordinary set of events, Ben.
I mean, it's hugely embarrassing, damning, I'd say, for the Met, Aggie, isn't it? Because policing relies on, people being able to go to the police and say, I've heard this, or I've got this information, or I'd like to expose this criminality. And if there's not that sort of assumption of confidentiality, even if you're the Speaker of the House of Commons, then the whole thing sort of falls apart. So for them to take that information that was given to them in confidence and basically go straight to Mandelson or his lawyers and say, well, Lindsay Hoyle's told us you're fleeing to the British Virgin Islands. I mean, an apology is one thing, but it's quite stunningly incompetent on the part of the Met, I would have thought.
Well, also, not only that, Ben, but to get it slightly wrong, to say that Lord Mandelson's lawyers were told that it was Lord Forsyth, when it wasn't. It was Sir Lindsay Hoyle. Said to add that to the list of sort of difficulties that the Met have had. I mean, it is just an absolutely extraordinary story. And actually, it sounds like tonight that Lord Forsyth is now going to have to speak to the Met himself because he wants to work out how this happened. The BBC reporting that Lord Mandelson's lawyers were told not once, but twice that information about his alleged travel plans had been passed on by Lord Forsyth. Again, not the right name. But even if it was, of course, it wouldn't be appropriate to then pass on the information of who had been the source of that alleged information.
And just finally, Aggie, I mean, Lord Mandelson, known for a long time as the Prince of Darkness, it seems that he's still sort of spinning and briefing about his own arrest and the sequence of events that led up to it. I mean, is that, that's fairly extraordinary as well. That he's, as you say, sending these quote-unquote friends messages and giving his side of the story at 4 a.m. He's not going quietly into the sunset, put it that way.
No, and do you remember, Ben, after he was sacked as US ambassador, when he sort of lay low for a few weeks and then started doing interviews and did an interview with the BBC, among other places, on Laura Koenigsberg's Sunday show, and started talking a lot about foreign policy as well as talking, was asked questions about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So I think, if you've ever had a job like that where you've been so intimately involved in sort of spinning and all that comes with that, then I think it's probably quite difficult to stop doing that, even when the story is very much about yourself.
Aggie, thank you very much. That's Aggie Schomburg, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. You listen to Ben Kentish here on LBC. Lots more to come with your calls on the Green Party plan for an illegal migrant amnesty. And we'll see what's leading tomorrow's newspaper front pages. The time, 10:45.
LBC, this morning on Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Ed Miliband, Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. I hear what you're trying to do with energy bills. We've got security blocks on chocolate and cheese. What are the government doing about that?
Ever since the financial crisis of 2008, people have been facing a long-term affordability crisis.
Do you know the price of a Mars bar?
I'm not going to get into quiz questions with you.
Politicians are so removed from reality.
I'm not going to do the Nick Ferrari quiz, I'm afraid.
Politicians are removed from reality.
I know the reality that people face.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
The Hillary sale ends soon, so get window-wise and grab these amazing offers while you still can. Like up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, grab £50 off your electric blind order and conveniently control your blinds for less. And don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included.
So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. But hurry, the Hillarys sale ends on the 9th of March. Conditions apply.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group Clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
With over 50 years' experience, Fidelity can help you feel confidently invested. Make the most of your annual allowances by the 1st of April with our expert insights, excellent service and a wealth of investment options. For ISAs, pensions or advice, go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk, terms apply.
At TfL, we're opening up more of London for everyone with step-free access. We're continuing to improve accessibility at many of our stations, and now over 200 stations and counting have step-free access, including the entire Elizabeth Line, DLR and all tram stops. That is how we're making the greener way to travel more accessible to all. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Greener than total estimated petrol and diesel car emissions.
And when teams feel supported, they can achieve anything.
Sorry. Just heard even more of my team are off ill. Have you tried Benenden Health? It's easy to set up. They've got a GP helpline you can book 24/7.
Whoa.
Coffee break, hopefully. Press play on your people's health with a wide range of healthcare services for less than £16 per employee per month. Search Benenden for business. Fee review periodically. T's and C's apply. Qualifying periods apply to some services. UK only. Visit benenden.co.uk. We asked patients at Great Ormond Street Hospital what makes someone special.
They can let me down lots and lots. We have to like arts in class. Their favourite food is chocolate cake. They might be a magician, so they can magically make me better. They would be kind.
Does that sound like you? Be someone special and leave a gift in your will to Gosh Charity. Search Gosh Legacy for your Gifts in Wills guide.
Thank you.
This is LBC. Message Ben Kentish on WhatsApp now on 0345 6060 973.
10:29, Ben Kentish here with you on LBC. Judd, come to your first time call in just a moment, and Sandy, not your first time call, in a couple of minutes as well. Let's have a look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages just before we do that. Starting with The Guardian, which focuses on what it calls a damning report and exposes a scandal of NHS maternity unit cover-ups. Hospitals that cause harm and injury to women and babies during childbirth often resort to a cover-up of their mistakes, falsify medical records and deny bereaved parents answers, according to a damning new report. It's stunning. We'll perhaps look more in detail at that tomorrow once the full details emerge. The Independent leads on the story that we were just discussing with Aggie Chambray. Speaker tipped off police that Mandelson was a flight risk. That the extraordinary admission, as the Independent puts it, by Lindsay Boyle today. Same story on the front of the Daily Mail, which asks the question, is Prince of Darkness up to his old spin tricks? Scotland Yard made an extraordinary apology to the Commons Speaker yesterday as a row broke out over Peter Mandelson's arrest, is the Daily Mail lead. The Telegraph reports that doubling cash for the NHS had no impact. That, according to former Tory Health Minister Lord Bethell. The Times claims that Jeffrey Epstein used the UK as a hub to traffic scores of women. Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking women through British airports as recently as 2019, just a month before his arrest. Records appear to show. The Times has analysed booking records, fuel receipts and flight logs disclosed in the Epstein files that seems to show Epstein flying in and out of Britain by private jet more than 60 times. Turning to the Daily Mirror, they look ahead to the Gorton and Denton by-election tomorrow, which we will have full coverage of on this show tomorrow night. Don't let hate win, Keir Starmer's message ahead of that crunch vote tomorrow. And last but not least, the Daily Express, just say no. Don't reward French for boats failure. France should get no more UK taxpayer cash until it stops the boats, according to the Daily Express. Right, talking of stopping the boats, the Green Party wants to give an asylum to anybody who comes here illegally, let them work, let them be housed, give them access to the NHS and give them financial support as well. That's the Green Party proposal, but what do you think of the idea? Judd's calling tonight for the very first time in from Birmingham. Judd, welcome.
Hiya, Ben. A pleasure to speak with you.
And you, Judd.
So I've got a bit of an issue. I think it's a load of nonsense, really. So, me, myself, I'm a British Indian. So, my father came here, would be 40, 50 years ago. So, he came from Africa. I think a lot of the listeners you have, so a lot of them were kicked out of Uganda by Idi Amin. So, he came here legally, set up a business. It was hard. When racism was at its peak, it was very difficult for them. What we found, though, is we assimilated properly. We mourned when the Queen died, everything. We would consider ourselves as British. Now, what the Green Party are doing is what I think a lot of far-left policies are trying to create. They think they're creating unity. The issue is it's creating more division. We've been here legally. I would never ever think about taking benefits. I'm 27, finished university, couldn't get a job, but I've been working. I've refused to go on benefits, so I've always found a job, even if it's doing menial things that nothing to do with my degree. I get it done. And what we're finding now is, right, if the Green Party allow this, a load of illegals to come in, it just ruins it. Because I can see from a person's perspective, from a white British-born person, they haven't got the equal opportunities, and they look at these illegals coming in and being like, what the hell? They're getting money, they're getting a job when I can't find one. So what it does is they'll paint us all with the same brush, and I don't actually blame them, because I don't know if anyone's gone really around Birmingham. There's people like Zach himself who would never ever go down certain streets of Birmingham. That is where there's a huge amount of illegal immigration, and they're not coming here to get jobs. There is open drug dealing. I walk down there. I don't feel safe whatsoever. I would consider myself like a guy that can get along with a lot of things. It's really bad. There's a lot of people who are living in their, penthouses up in Knightsbridge. They're not seeing what it's really looking like and what the actual implications are.
How do you know those people are illegal?
So it's really obvious. So if you go, I work around an area of Handsworth and Lizelle, which are very, very deprived areas. Very high immigration there as well. There are openly people that come to our store who are lawyers and stuff, and they participate in saying, yeah, we easily get these guys through. They're completely illegal. They know how to make the system. Saying sometimes they're coming from countries and they'll say, yeah, they'll TikTok saying they're homosexual, things like that. That make them seem like this.
So your worry is that if this was brought in by the Greens, if they hadn't gone into power, this would just fuel more hatred and division against all immigrants legal. It would sort of tar everyone in the same brush.
I completely think that, because they aren't coming here to work. If they wanted to come in...
They are, but a lot of them do what that was Raju's point. If a lot of them are working here already. We have a kind of an illegal economy, right, in which thousands upon thousands of people are working. His point is, I don't know if you heard the call, but his point was, given they're here already, they're already working. Better to make it official and then make them pay tax and contribute than just pretend they're not here and working anyway, because they are.
100%, I 100% agree with that, but it's from a very idealistic point of view. Then there are a lot of unregistered people. I do agree, but then I think it was your point as well, is what we'll do if people come in illegally, then do you kind of accept that kind of behaviour? Because then people looking at it are like, hang on, if I do the same, I'm not going to get penalised here, I'm not going to face prison, I'd actually be better off. And I think if the country was in a situation where, I don't know, we're like Switzerland, where where it's going great, everything's working well, we could be then in that perspective. Then we could look at an idealistic point.
Isn't it? This talk of a world without borders sounds wonderful. I mean, wouldn't it be lovely if we could just all go and live wherever we want to and share this planet that we all call home without sort of restrictions? Two problems there, John, aren't there? The first, the world's very unequal, and there are a lot more people who would rather come from, say, Sudan to live in Britain than British people that would want to go and live in Sudan, Syria or Eritrea, or you take your pick. That's the reality. And the second reality is everybody else has borders. So if we say, come on in, it's not like us Brits are going to be able to go and live wherever we want, because every other country does have borders.
Exactly. It's kind of making our country a bit of a laughing stock in that sense of we want to be great, and I will consider we used to be great. The issue is with the migration, and I don't blame both sides really. I would be considered, some might paint me as right, but that's from views that I hold, and then they'll paint us all in the same brush. Even though I couldn't ever go to a far right march, I think I'd get beaten up probably. But I get painted in that.
I hear you, and it's offensive to people like your family who have come here and worked hard and done things legally. if then people who have not done any of that get the same rewards that you've had to work so hard for. I hear you, Judge. Thank you very much indeed for the first time call. Let's see what Sandy in Amersham makes of this Green Party proposal. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Ben. When I heard this morning, I was absolutely shocked that anyone would even put this out as a thought. It is absolute lunacy. Can you imagine asking the people in this country who are struggling to get by, paying their taxes, paying NI, and their children who can't get a home, probably have to wait till their parents die before they get a home, and can't get jobs, how hard it is, and then put this global advert out. Oh, come here, you get a house, you'll get money whether you work or not.
That's the key bit.
Free health care.
Whether or not these people are working, they would still get quote-unquote financial support from the Greens, and they would get the access to the NHS. That is just ridiculous.
It's just lunacy. You can't do this to people, working people who've paid through their life. You know, it is just crazy. And what it will cause is hatred towards immigrants, whether they're good or not, because a lot of the immigrants in this country, they are hard-working, they have helped this country, they're good people, and they're the ones that are going to suffer, because the boatloads are going to empty out, and they're going to see all these immigrants moving into flats and houses, getting a wage, getting what they need, then they're going to bring all their relatives over.
They talk about pull factors when it comes to immigration. This just sends out a message to the entire world, doesn't it? Come to Britain.
Well, we might as well send planes over and collect them.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't argue with anyone who said, Sandy. I have got to leave it there, though. Thank you very, very much, Nick, for wrapping up. Interesting conversation. I've got to say, we try and get a kind of representative mix of callers on air. Nobody apart from Rajiv called in to say this is a good idea, and judging by the WhatsApps and the texts, virtually nobody thinks it is. Why? Because it quite clearly isn't a good idea, if you ask me. We are going to move on after the news at 11 o'clock. We're going to return to the topic of student loans, which is becoming a real political headache for the Labour Party, entirely of their own making, if you ask me. Rachel Reeves came out today and said that she believes the student loan system is broken. This is the same Rachel Reeves who only a month ago insisted it was entirely fair. So what do you make of how the government has handled this, and what should they do?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle has revealed he passed a tip-off to police prior to the Lord Manderson's arrest. Lawyers for the former US ambassador say he was detained following a baseless suggestion he was planning to leave the country. Co-host of the newsagent's podcast, Emily Maitlis, has told LBC Sir Lindsay was in the British Virgin Islands during last week's recess. She says there's speculation that may have been where the tip-off came from.
We don't know whether it was a hunch, whether it was gossip, or whether they had a piece of written evidence that suggested he was looking to transfer, his domain there. This is what I'm going to say. The plot thickens, but we are none the wiser. And I guess there will be a whole different sort of rabbit trail going off now, looking at who Lindsay Hoyle was speaking to, why he was in the British Virgin Islands, who was paying for that particular trip, and whether it was correct.
The Metropolitan Police has apologised to Sir Lindsay. Manderson denies claims he passed information to Jeffrey Epstein while he was the business secretary. Kemi Badenoch told LBC she absolutely will not apologise for claiming Labour is being called a pedo defenders party during Prime Minister's questions. It came after reports female Labour MPs told Sir Keir Starmer that voters had screamed the phrase at them over the Peter Mandelson scandal. Conservative leader told us she was just stating a fact.
I'm merely reflecting that people are saying this. I'm not calling them pedo defenders. I'm merely saying that even they are saying they're being called that, and saying that the language I'm using is disgusting when I'm just merely pointing out a fact. This is shroud waving. You don't need to feel sorry for Labour MPs. They brought this on themselves.
A former gamekeeper has been jailed for at least 19 years for murdering a former colleague with a shotgun in the Scottish Highlands. A court heard a festering grievance led to 77-year-old David Campbell to kill Brian Lowe 2 years ago on a country road near Aberfeldy. Police have increased patrols in Manchester after a man armed with an axe gained entry to a mosque in the city. A man in his 40s has been arrested in connection with the incident. And the Culture Secretary has spoken to the BBC's Director General after a racial slur was broadcast during the BAFTAs. The corporation says a fast-track inquiry is looking into what happened. LBC weather, wet and windy tomorrow, blustery rain across western and northern areas, drier in the morning, a high of 14 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Ben Kentish.
11:02 is the time. You listen to Ben Kentish here on LBC. Very, very good evening to you if you're just tuning in. We're going to return to the issue for the next hour of student loans, which is an issue that we began talking about on this programme about a month or so ago. Since when it's become, firstly, an enormous political issue, and secondly, an enormous political headache for the Labour Party. I'm going to play you in a moment two separate clips of the Chancellor Rachel Reeves speaking about the student loan system. They are a month apart. They were both interviews with LBC reporters, and the comments that Rachel Reeves makes in them, I mean, you tell me what you think, but it seemed to me they couldn't be more different. But the tone the Chancellor was striking a month ago is wildly disparate from the tone she is striking now. What's changed in that month? The politics have changed. First Reform came out and said that they would scrap interest on student loans, which is clearly a hugely attractive offer to young people. Then this week, early this week, Kemi Badenoch came out and said the Conservatives would also reform the system, which she claimed was broken. They would reduce the interest that students have to pay back. And this in the context of a Labour government, which is generally seen as the party that young people support most, and has ended up defending a system that even Reform and the Tories now accept is completely unfair on young people. So I want your thoughts this hour on how you think the government has handled this issue and what you would like to see Rachel Reeves doing about what I call the student loan scandal, which is a whole generation of young people being, as I see it, conned, scammed, ripped off, call it what you want, by the government, which is acting less like the leaders of this country and more like sort of payday loan sharks when it comes to student loans. They are charging young people interest rates that most people aren't paying on their mortgage. And this isn't a commercial bank. This isn't some dodgy high street lender. This is the government ripping off young people in this way. And yet nothing is being done about it by the Labour government. They have no seemingly imminent plans to reform a system that even Reform and the Tories accept is completely unjust. Have a listen to these two clips of Rachel Reeves. First, this is the Chancellor speaking to LBC's political editor Natasha Clark less than a month ago.
Well, it is important that you don't have to start paying back the student loan until you earn enough money. And that is the point of the student loan system, that you get the loan, you get that great university education, and you only pay it back if you can afford to do so. And obviously, after a period of time, that gets written off entirely. I think that is a fair system.
So that's Rachel Reeves speaking less than a month ago. It is a fair system, said the Chancellor then. Here's the same Rachel Reeves speaking about the same student loan system to LBC's reporter Joe Draper today.
We inherited a broken system and we can't change everything straight away.
You don't think it's fair?
I think it's broken. I think it is absolutely broken. The previous government lost control of inflation, and because they lost control of inflation, repayments went through the roof. But when we came into government, we had to reduce NHS waiting lists, which we are doing. We had to reform the education system for kids with special educational needs, and we are doing that. We had to get the money to build more prison places because our prison places were full to bursting point. And we had to get a grip of the cost of living, which was crippling families across the country. So yes, like many things, the student loan system is broken. We are doing things like bringing back maintenance grants. Is there more to do? Of course there is. And today's announcement will help everybody, whether you are a young person paying an energy bill as a graduate or a student or a family. That is the right approach to get the cost of living under control, put more money in people's pockets.
Now, if that has left you feeling a little bit confused, then you are not alone. Because I am baffled. I am completely bemused by what you just heard. How can the very same Chancellor who thought the student loan system was, in her words, fair 4 weeks ago, now suddenly insist that it is broken? Which is it, Rachel Reeves? Because it's about time you make your mind up. You can't come out and say it's fair 1 week and then it's broken the next, and then next week it will be fair again. Or, as she puts it today, well, it's broken, but, we're not going to fix it anytime soon. What is she on about? It's absolutely absurd, the position the Chancellor has adopted on this. I don't think she has an ounce of political nous in her body, because if she did, she wouldn't have gone out defending it in the first place, only to yet again find herself having to U-turn, because she's been backed into a corner like this by Nigel Farage and Camille Baynor, who have done a better job of standing up for young graduates when it comes to this con than the Labour government has. I'm lost for words, frankly. But my words, another U-turn is coming. There is absolutely no way that Rachel Reeves will go into the next election. I mean, she won't be Chancellor by the next election, I guess. But there's no way that Labour will go into the next election without having to have done something about a system that is seen as a hugely totemic issue and toxic issue by an entire generation of young graduates. But what a shambles that it's taken us so long in the first place. Your thoughts, please, on how the government is handling the issue of the student loan system, which Rachel Reeves did think was fair, now thinks is broken, but apparently isn't going to do anything about anytime soon. In the context of the fact that Reform and the Tories have come out with clear policies for reforming the system. And what would you like to see Rachel Reeves do? Spring statement next week. She could stand up and say something is going to be done quite drastically differently when it comes to student loans in this country. What would you like to hear Rachel Reeves say? So there's two questions there for you. How has the government handled this issue in your view? And I'd love to hear from you if you are a young graduate lawyer. And what would you like to see Rachel Reeves do now that she's finally been forced to admit that the system she defended less than a month ago as fair is actually broken? What a mess. 0345 6060 973 for your thoughts on that. You can WhatsApp the same number or text me on 84850. You can also say, Alexa, send a comment to LBC. Let's talk to Arthur Joustra about it. NHS paediatric trainee doctor, currently £72,000 in student loan debt. Arthur, good to have you on the programme tonight. Tell me about your story and your experience with the student loan system, if you would, sir. Evening.
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. I'm a paediatrics trainee, which means I went to med school for 5 years, did my 2 foundation years, did have a year out in the middle where I was still working full time, and now I'm on a full training programme, my 4th year in the NHS. And so I borrowed £55,000 as tuition as well as maintenance. Before graduation, I was sitting somewhere in the £60,000, and currently it's at 72, despite 4 years of full-time work, paying off roughly £250 to £300 a month. It's going up £5,000 a year and paying off £3,000, which isn't an insignificant amount of money, and that pot is just growing and growing and growing. It's going to still be some time before I'm even breaking even, let alone paying it off.
So when did you graduate?
So I graduated in 2022.
Right, so in the last 3.5 years or so, you have accrued, well actually it starts when you start the course, but since you started university a few years before that, the amount that you have to repay has gone up by, what are we on, about £17,000?
Yeah, so it's gone up 17,000. That's also in the context of the best part of 3.5 years paying 3,000. So if I hadn't paid anything, if I'd have gone off and travelled or whatever and not actually worked, it would be sitting in the 80s now. So that 72 is with quite significant financial input along the way.
What did you make of Rachel Reeves coming out a month ago and saying the system that has hit you with that level of debt is, to use her word, fair?
It riled me up, I think, is probably the best way to put it. To hear it called fair, no mention of the huge inequalities from the poor income students versus the wealthy who can pay up their student loan up front. There's no way the system is fair. There's a lot of controversies with it. So just to have that blanket statement, is frankly quite offensive to a lot of people who've worked really hard and then suffering this 9% graduate tax. And also, as we've seen yesterday, she's kind of completely gone back on what she said, saying that the system is broken, which is albeit quite comical and confusing as to how she's changed so much in such a short amount of time.
And yet, in terms of the question, OK, Chancellor, you accept the system is broken, what are you going to do about it at the Spring Statement next week? It seems that the answer is absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's these vague, quite indirect things. We're going to improve the cost of living crisis, reduce inflation, which, overall are good things if that is something that they are able to do, but it doesn't directly address the issue whatsoever. These are general good things that would be great for everybody, but actually if we're looking at this specific issue, there's very blanket statements that really don't address any of the key issues that we're seeing.
What would you like the government, what would you like the Chancellor to say next week?
So I think there's three major things we're really campaigning for. The first is that why they're using RPI rather than CPI. It's higher, it's not really using anything else other than it seems when it suits them to get higher interest rates. They then add 3% on top of that on your earnings. So the interest rates for me have been as high as 8.1%, which on a £70,000 loan is a lot of money. So we're kind of really questioning why that's even there in the first place. And the third thing is that after the threshold, you're repaying 9%. Firstly, we're asking for that threshold to keep it in line with inflation, as we were initially promised, which it hasn't done. They've said it's going to freeze until 2030. And secondly, rather than being 9%, reducing that to maybe something like 5%. So actually, it's not reducing your net income after a certain amount to essentially 50%.
So what you're basically saying is you're happy to pay £9,500. You're happy to take loans out to pay that. You're happy to pay interest on those loans. All you are asking for is a lower rate of interest on the repayments and to be able to pay it back at a slightly slower rate. That's all you're asking for.
Well, I think that's it. No one is begrudging the fact that it's there. I personally think having a system to allow people that haven't got that money up front to go to university is fantastic. It's what we should be aiming for as a society, to provide higher education and finance not being an issue. And if the student loan system is what's needed to do that, then there's no arguing with the fact that it does provide people that opportunity. But then exploiting that to the point of people, I will probably pay back in the realm of £150,000 to £200,000, and it's not uncommon for people's debt to quite quickly.
Let's say that again. £250,000 is what you think you'll end up paying back on an initial loan of £55,000.
Yeah, so particularly for doctors, what happens is you start off at a fairly median salary for a graduate, you then work up over about 10 years to become a consultant, training throughout that entire time, where you then will be earning quite a good wage compared to the average salary. The issue you get is in that 10 years you're accruing a lot of money in interest, and this pot is just building and building and building. Whilst there's money left to be paid off, you'll pay it off, and if it gets wiped at 30 years, you've then got 20 years left to be paying 9% of everything you earn, which could be up to £9,000 a year.
It's a pyramid scheme, isn't it? It's a con, it's a scam, and it's a government, it's a government policy. Would it be fair to say, and let's put everything else to one side, all other policies and prejudices and so on, but specifically on this issue, both Reform UK and the Conservatives have got a sort of more generous offer for young graduates and students than the Labour Party on this issue.
Yes, I think that certainly the things that have come out, particularly Kerry Badenoch, she was earlier than Labour to point out the unfairness of the system, and I don't think she's incorrect. I think I do kind of hold, take it with a pinch of salt in that, they aren't the parties in power. It was the Conservative government that, for the last 13 years, had this policy and put a lot of these changes in place. It's quite difficult to take their word on that. Is it potentially just a grab for some easy votes from a cohort of people that they know are quite politically active, that they know are going to go out and vote? Potentially, I don't disagree with what they're saying, and actually, if they did do those things for student loans, it would be great. I don't think necessarily the sincerity is there that we can change votes to go towards that.
You think it's a bit it's a canny ruse from Kemi Baden?
Yeah, I think they're seeing that this isn't just a flash in the news cycle. This is an issue that's here to stick around. It affects a lot of people, and actually, if they can get that, it's a big tick in most people's boxes. I would take it with a pinch of salt. It's quite easy to say when you're not the party in power, and it does seem a little bit hypocritical that they were the party, particularly Conservatives that made this policy, and it was under them for 10 years. They didn't really know
and now they're saying they would reduce the interest rates that students have to pay back. Reform, I believe, is saying they'd abolish interest completely. You'd get interest-free loans under a Reform government.
I mean, look, it'd be great. I wouldn't argue with it if that was a policy that was going to come in. And we've got to argue, what do we want from a society? Do we want to invest in education? And I would argue the answer is yes. With reform, though, a lot of their policies, a lot of their finances are very sceptical. They've said numerous sweeping statements by the NHS, and as a doctor, I'm very kind of keen to see where's the kind of meat behind that. Often they can't provide it, and often there's other things hidden behind that. They're very quick to say they privatise the NHS, things like this. So I don't think we can necessarily take them at their words on that this is going to happen. But I do think it does put that pressure on the Labour government to do something about this issue.
Arthur, great to have you with us. Thank you very, very much indeed for coming on. Arthur Jastra, an NHS paediatric trainee doctor who's currently £72,000 in debt, reckons he's going to have to pay back up to £250,000, having only borrowed 55 from the government. If that is not a scam being perpetuated by the government and the current Chancellor, then what is it? It's an absolute con. And I think the Chancellor, as like so many other issues recently, handled this woefully, ineptly, incompetently, stupidly from a political perspective. She couldn't have got this worse, and now she's being dragged into yet another U-turn by Nigel Farage and Camille Bailey. What do you make of Labour's handling of the student loan scandal, and what would you like to see them do differently? 0345 6060 973 for your thoughts on that. Your calls after this.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
This is taxation without representation.
Straight to the point.
You get giddy with all these U-turns.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
How lucky he gets up in the morning, really, isn't it?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
It's not easy being a clamp, stuck on the wheel of the one person on the street who didn't tax their car. Yeah, Graham at number 7, I'm talking about you. Bet the neighbourhood group chat is as well. Wish I had a group chat. Maybe I can chat to myself. Hi, Clampy, how's it going? Oh, great, Clampy. Being clamped to the only untaxed car for miles is so lonely. Over 98% of drivers tax their vehicle on time. Tax it, don't risk it. Visit gov.uk/DVLA/tax it.
Chase is the digital bank that boosts your savings to 4.5% AER variable.
A boost?
Yep. It includes a 2.25% AER boost for the first 12 months.
Are they being boosted now?
All the time. Bedtime, gym time, romantic dinner time. And soon you could boost your way to...
beach time.
Boost your savings with Chase. Search Chase Boosted Saver. 18 plus UK residents. Available to new Chase current account customers for their first 31 days. 4.41% gross interest paid monthly. Eligibility and T's and C's apply.
Sunlight's guaranteed over 50 plan and gave confidence to Jane and Chris. With their insurance sorted, they're becoming naturists. Cutting loose in their birthday suits, feeling elegant and free. But when they answered the door, the postman saw more than he expected to see. Sunlight, a little confidence goes a long way. No medical questions and a cash payout. Search Sunlight cover today.
Premiums paid could exceed the payout. Full cover after 1 year. Ages 49 to 85.
Ben Kentish on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
11 is the time. Ben Kentish here with you on LBC. Your call's coming in on the government's initial defence of the student loan system as fair. That was the claim by Rachel Reeves, who now says it's broke 4 weeks later. I mean, make your mind up, Chancellor. There's thousands of young people here are paying through the nose in interest. The least that you can do, if you have any respect for them whatsoever, is make your damn mind up about what you think of the thing, which she can't even do. She now thinks it's broken. All right, great, it's broken. Chancellor, well done, you got there in the end. What are you going to do to fix it? Got a spring statement next week. She'll stand up in the House of Commons, make all sorts of announcements. What's she going to announce on this? Nothing. So she accepts it's broken, but she can't find a way to fix it. That's consolation, isn't it? To people like our guest Arthur, who's going to have to pay about £250,000 on an initial 55 grand loan. It's a shambles. It's an absolute... I cannot believe the level and the scale of the political ineptitude and incompetence in the Treasury team that we have right now, that they could not spot this trap coming a mile off. When even Nigel Farage is saying, young people are being clobbered. This is Reform UK, doing a better job of standing up for young people than the Labour Party. the Labour Party that I think it was 40% of young people put their trust in at the last general election. Kemi Badenoch, the Tories, are leading the way on this now. How has Labour got itself into a mess where it's playing catch-up with Reform UK and the Conservatives on such a fundamental totemic issue for an entire generation of young people? The levels of political incompetence that it takes to end up in that situation if you are the Chancellor or the Prime Minister are staggering, if you ask me. But you tell me, how do you think the government has handled this? And what should they be doing differently? What would you like to hear from them instead? Rachel's on the line in Windsor tonight to talk about exactly that. How are you, Rachel?
Oh, I'm good, thank you. Yeah,
good.
So number of things. So I just think because, not Labour kind of, they've picked up a legacy, let's be clear about that. And they are trying to fix it, but they're fixing it in an absolutely atrocious way. They're not admitting to the fact the system is messed up. My daughter, forget about the interest, they can't even get jobs. And we were all just missold university degrees. I was one of the lucky people that got a free university degree back in the 90s, at Birmingham University. But it's I come from that old school of, be educated. And I just think our youth are being penalised for being educated. And it's just making me so cross. We're just going to have a really dumb nation of youth people.
You listen to Arthur, who we're just talking to, and you listen to other young people. They would be well within their right to say, what we want is free university, because that's what our parents' generation and grandparents' generation. We want to go for free. We don't want to pay loans at all. We don't want to pay anything. All they are saying is, okay, we're happy to pay we're willing to pay £9,500 a year. We're willing to pay back tens of thousands of pounds of debt. We're willing to pay interest on that debt. All we are asking for from the Chancellor, all we want right now, is not to pay that interest at a punitive rate that is 3% above the rate of inflation. And even on that, the Chancellor's answer for now is, sorry, not something we can do.
You get the lectures. They don't even get the lectures.
I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
Abysmal.
What do you make of Labour's sort of handling of it? Rachel Reeves said it was fair. Now she says it's broken. But
I'm so shocked that I'm now starting to think about reform. It's just abysmal. I have no words.
What, because of this, Rachel?
I just think our youth are being absolutely screwed over by Labour government. And I'm doing 2 jobs at the moment, working as an LSA and doing another job, and I'm being taxed twice, right? And my daughter's trying to get a job, and all we're being is taxed and screwed over. And the more I hear some reform, I'm just thinking, why do I bother? It's just...
Well, to be fair to them, this system was devised and designed by the Conservatives. So, you might say it's a little bit rich that Kemi Badenoch now says it's broken, given that she was part of the governments that formed it. But, you're right to say that both she and Nigel Farage are offering more of a solution right now than the Labour government.
Well, they're saying it. They're saying it.
They're talking
so the general public are going to buy into that. Yep. That's the problem.
How much in debt is your daughter, Rachel?
So she's about £62,000 for a 3-year psychology degree and a super bright kid. And one of the reasons she went to university for me was life experience. And you can't pay enough for that. And do you know what? If she never pays it off, so be it. She's come out of it a better person.
Yeah. But she's going to be paying some of it off for the next 30, 40 years.
Well, that's what makes me sick. So, but it is what it is.
And it's going up every single year, presumably, because of the interest.
I just hope. Or what I think they should do is just take the interest away.
Then the interest will be paying. Basically be using young graduates as a cash cow by making them pay interest at all. It's bad enough making them pay £9,500 a year for a university that a lot of people got in this country for free until relatively recently. as a national scandal.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Ben. Give you a little bit of background. When student loans first came into fruition, I worked as a debt advisor for a national charity. And the idea was that it was the cheapest way to get a loan, so the interest rate was cheaper than anything on the high street. However, that's obviously morphed and changed greatly. Also, when student loans first came out, it was something that if the debt was too big, you could discharge it through bankruptcy. The government then changed the law and said it was one of those excluded debts, along with gambling and child maintenance, that could not be discharged through a legitimate form of bankruptcy or debt relief order. So that changed. As a debt advisor for many years, if somebody came to me and said, I've got lots of debts, I can't pay them, we would do a financial statement for them. And we would write to all the creditors saying, please would you freeze the interest? This individual does not have the funds to meet the interest. And part of the obligation that creditors have is that they would have to freeze the interest until such time as the individual could afford to pay. But you can't do that with student loans. So there's a lot of manipulation, I think, to the scheme that doesn't apply to other creditors.
Yes, that's why I think it's a scam.
I would scam or whatever. It's a manipulation of a system that doesn't apply to other creditors because they have to freeze their interest. Their debt can be discharged through bankruptcy or a debt relief order if it's under a certain amount. So again, it doesn't. It's
Margaret,
very
sorry,
unfair.
just correct me if I'm wrong. So what I think, am I right to infer that what the government makes other lenders do, banks, payday lenders, whatever they are, the conditions that they have to fulfil, the government itself doesn't when it comes to students and graduates. Is that right?
100%.
Right. So it's the law, but it doesn't apply to Rachel Reeves, basically, or the Chancellor.
The way they've written it into the insolvency law, you cannot discharge student loan debt, and also you cannot freeze the interest.
Right. So a bank under the law would have to be more generous to me on my mortgage than the Chancellor of the Exchequer would be to a student and their student debt. Yes. And that's the system that Rachel Reeves 4 weeks ago thought was fine.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Well, Margaret, I didn't know that.
Not a lot of people do, which is why I phoned in.
Well, I'm glad you did, because it's just another element that just makes me think this is just a scandal, isn't it? A scandal that the Labour Chancellor, I've just checked, 41% of 18 to 24-year-olds put their trust in the Labour government in 2024, far more than voted for any other party. And those young graduates, and a lot of them will be graduates, being repaid by this Chancellor, telling them that the scam that is being perpetuated against them is fair, although she now admits it's broken but isn't going to do anything about it. What do you think she should do, Margaret?
Well, just one other thing. I seem to remember, but it was such a long time ago that they were introduced. It was said that any person taking out a student loan, that wouldn't affect their ability to get a mortgage. Well, hasn't life changed? Because listening to some of your callers when they're saying they're paying £500-600 a month, don't tell me that is not making a decision to a mortgage lender or to a person wanting to pay rent to affect the decision of the other party.
Because when you apply for a mortgage, they ask, don't they? They ask how much you are being charged in student loan repayments and so on. And not only will they factor that in when they work out how much they can lend you, and that might be the difference between you being able to afford a house or not, but also, of course, that £600-800 a month that you're paying in student loan interest, that could have been a deposit for an entire generation that can't get on the housing market. Rachel Reeves thought it was fair 4 weeks ago. What's changed in the last 4 weeks? Nothing's fundamental. The system hasn't changed. Nothing about the system that she defended less than a month ago has changed. What's changed is that Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch have come out and said, no, it's not fair, actually, and we'd do something about it. So Rachel Reeves now says, they're right, it's not fair, but I'm not going to do anything about it. This is the Labour government. This is the Labour government. This is a Labour Chancellor. outflanked on an issue of young people's of such importance for young people by Nigel Farage and Baby. What an absolute fiasco. Thank you, Margaret. A lot there I didn't know. Thank you for informing us and educating us about some of the extra injustice that's inherent in the student loan system. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Plus,
Mr. Speaker, this is a bill about animal welfare, transparency in meat production and consumer choice.
some Conservative MPs want to take action against kosher and halal ways of killing animals, but some of their own Tory colleagues say the proposals are divisive. But is it time for a crackdown on methods of killing animals that animal rights campaigners say are cruel and unjust? Or is this an attack on people's religious freedoms? We'll talk more about that after news headlines. It is 11:31. Here's Darren Jackson.
The Met Police have apologised to the Commons Speaker for telling Lord Mandelson he had passed information on to police. Sir Lindsay Hoyle told MPs earlier that he had spoken to Scotland Yard prior to the former US ambassador's arrest. Kemi Badenoch told LBC no one would be calling Labour a pedo defenders party if they held themselves to a higher standard. The daughter of murdered MP, Sir David Amess, says a Conservative leader should apologise for her comments during PMQs. And the Culture Secretary says she's spoken to the BBC Director General over the completely unacceptable racial slur that was broadcast during the BAFTAs. Tim Davey has ordered a fast-tracked investigation into why it wasn't edited out. LBC weather wet and windy tomorrow, blistering rain in northern areas, drier in the morning and staying mild with a high of 14 degrees.
This is LBC.
Get 3 months half price when you switch to an unlimited SIM with 3. That means quick streaming, faster downloads, and more money to spend on the things you love. Join the UK's fastest 5G network and get your unlimited SIM today. Buy now in store or c3.co.uk.
Unlimited 24-month light plan. Proof of switching required based on Ookla speed test intelligence data 2H 2025. All rights reserved. Subject to credit checks and terms.
Wrong tool for the job? Don't make that mistake with your van. Get up to 30% off selected new Toyota vans and pickups with a warranty up to 10 years or 100,000 miles with every qualifying routine service. Visit your nearest Toyota centre or visit toyota.co.uk/van savings for more details. Savings on selected vans and pickups ordered by the 31st of March 2026. UK residents, see toyota.co.uk for full details. T's and C's apply.
Shine Night Walk London is a 10k, half marathon or full marathon supported walk around the city at night on the 19th of September to raise vital money for Cancer Research UK. It's also
everyone walking with all their colours twinkling away. You can actually see how nice London is, and London is different at night time. Celebration of life, and it gives hope.
Step towards a brighter future at shinewalk.org today to get 30% off your entry. Together, we are beating cancer. T's and C's apply.
This is 40 year old mother of 2 and self-confessed teleaddict.
Oh, look at you, that's brilliant. Well done.
This is also Kathy, working as part of a team to keep things calm at her local prison.
Listen, speak to me.
And helping someone's son write his first letter home in 8 months.
Well done, you should be really proud.
Thank you, miss. An extraordinary job, done by someone like you. Search prison jobs now.
This is LBC with Ben Kentish. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Andy's got in touch on WhatsApp. It's snarky, Andy. Hope you're getting paid for every time you mention Farage, says Andy. Well, no, I'm not. It was shocking to learn. But the reason I'm mentioning Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch in the context of this conversation about student loans is because both of them and their parties have come out with proposals for reforming a system that all politicians now accept is broken, or all parties seem to now accept is broken. The party that hasn't, but the only one of the main parties that doesn't have any proposal at all for reforming the system. In fact, the only party that's making it worse by freezing the thresholds at which young people start paying back their student loans is the Labour Party. Despite Rachel Reeves finally admitting today that she also agrees, a month after insisting it was fair, that it's not fair, actually it's broken. So what do you make of Labour's handling this? And what would you like to see the government do to help a generation of young graduates that are being crippled by punitive, outrageous rates of interest they're having to pay back on their student debt? Phil's on the line in Highbury tonight. Phil, what's going on?
Good evening, Ben. It's very nice to speak to you.
And you?
There's a lot of inflammatory language here. And you've mentioned the main point. The issue here is interest. Now, I'm of an age when I was going through school. I never, unfortunately, got to university, but it was free. It was free of charge. There was a bursary. There was grant maintenance. But the issue here now, listening to your callers, is that it's not the charges that are applied to actually going to university to benefiting society, which is ultimately surely what we all hope for, but it's the interest attached. So even if you're paying off £200 or £300 a month, you're not actually getting ahead of yourself. Now, psychologically, that's not a good place to be, but financially, it's appalling. The other callers have mentioned the fact that it does have an impact on potential mortgages as they're offered. And surely, I mean, I'm not an accountant, but for me it would appear obvious that if you were offering a bursary, in other words, an amount of money in order to allow somebody to go through the education process, then that is what you would expect them to repay back, plus perhaps an admin fee, a peppercorn amount almost. So an amount that would pay for the system to be operated. What you wouldn't wish to do as a government is to actually make money from the people who are going to benefit you in the future anyway. I don't understand why there is such a misunderstanding about this, because we're not necessarily meant to make money as a society on the people who will eventually benefit us, because education, if you treat people properly, will hopefully remain, and the benefits of that education will remain in this country. So if I can see that as a fair layman, I don't understand why the rest of the government can't. And
well, they can. I mean, Rachel Reeves has finally been forced to admit that, yeah, the system is unfair, broken, as she puts it. And yeah, it's incredible, isn't it, to have to come out and say, well, yes, it's broken, and then suggest that she's not going to do anything to fix it anytime soon. That's the point.
But this is a cross-party agreement to keep things in the status quo.
But it's not. That's the point. The Tories have come out and said, if we are in government, we will slash the rate at which students repay their debts. Reform's gone even further and said we won't charge them any interest at all. And the Labour policy on this is, so it's not cross-party. There are other proposals to fix the system, and there is nothing from Labour.
Okay, I'm not here to defend Labour or in fact any other political party, but the reality is, have we not generated a system whereby it's almost impossible now to recalculate backwards? And I think that is partially the problem. The issue here is surely that we want to encourage those who are academically able to go through the university process. Yep. And we want to provide a reasonable resource access for those who are not academically able, but who are physically able. When I was growing up, it was the various colleges, the places you would attend to become a bricklayer, to become an electrician. These people, not these people, but the professions that are bricklaying, electricians, carpenters and the like, they now earn much more than has ever been previously assumed, because their work is consistent. You cannot find a really good carpenter now unless you pay over the odds. So the academic aspiration that Tony Blair had is reasonable, it's understandable, but it isn't realistic.
No, it's not. And it was an outrageous act of deceit, I think, to convince, to tell young people that if 50% of them went to university, they would all be able to come out and get good, high-paid, secure graduate jobs. Because there simply aren't enough good, secure graduate jobs for all the graduates we now have. And so it's a double whammy. Those young graduates who were sold a lie, were peddled a con, by being told that university was the gateway to this land of milk and honey and financial security, are now being told, that didn't work out too well for you, did you? Oh, by the way, we'll charge you 6, 7, 8% of interest on your loans. The loans that you took out to get the university education that we, the government, told you was the only way to sort of get on in life. It's outrageous. And it's incredible that the Chancellor of the Exchequer has nothing to say about it. if you ask me. Lovely to have you on. Thank you very much indeed for the call. More calls to come on this. Let me know what you think of Labour's handling of this. You might think it's a bit unfair to sort of stick the boot into the party that ultimately didn't design the system. Kemi Badenoch says it's broken. Well, yeah, it was a Conservative design system, so it was her party that broke it. What do you make of it? What do you make of the government's handling of the student loan issue? And what would you like to see the solution be? Should it just be a reduction in interest rates? Should it be a complete abolition of interest payments? Or actually, should student loans be abolished completely? 0345 6060 973. Let's first, at 11:41, turn our attention to other matters for a couple of minutes. Proposals were made in Parliament today for the products of meat deriving from non-stun slaughter. This is the method that's used for halal and kosher meat, to be labelled so that people buying them are aware that the meat of the animals that they are buying weren't stunned before they were killed. This is a proposal from Esther McVeigh, Tory MP for Tatton. Here she is speaking in the House of Commons today.
The analysis shows the total meat supplied by non-stun slaughter is about 4 times greater than the population of Muslims and Jews in the UK. In effect, a 2-tier system has been created, one in which some slaughterhouses comply by stunning laws and one in which others don't, citing the religious exemption, without ever intending to focus their sale on that market. Unfortunately, a driver of this market of non-stun meat is that a step of the process is removed, meaning this meat production becomes cheaper. Supermarkets and food outlets can produce this cheaper meat without ever declaring it to the consumer, and this is not what was intended by legislation.
So Esther McVeigh wants non-stun meat to be labelled. She's been backed by other Conservative MPs, but others, including Michael Gove, former Cabinet Minister, have criticised that proposal as divisive today. Whose side are you on? Let's talk to Doug Moore about it, vegan advocate, nutritionist and a former slaughterhouse worker as well. Evening, Doug.
Hi there, Ben.
Well, who's right on this? Michael Gove says labelling non-stun meat would be divisive. Esther McVeigh, Alicia Kearns and others say, no, it's right that there's transparency for consumers. Where are you on it?
Well, I think they're both wrong, and I think you've got to question Esther McVeigh's motives for her timing of why she's brought this up when it's been an ongoing campaign by the BVA, RSPCA and other welfarist organisations for a long time. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with either side because I don't think it matters how you kill someone who doesn't want to die. I think the primary concern is that somebody who doesn't want to die is being killed at all. So Esther McVeigh mentions that.
Doug, you're against the slaughter of animals entirely. Are you more against the slaughter of animals that haven't been stunned than those that have?
It's slightly cheaper by cutting one part of the process. Wholesale, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Doug, there's been
and I'll tell you why.
Doug,
because firstly,
this is not going to work. I think we have to get Doug back on a better line because there's an awful delay, which means he's answering the question that I asked about 20 seconds ago. We'll see if we can get Doug back. I'm interested in your thoughts on this as well. You know, it's a sensitive issue because religious groups say, look, this is our practice, this is our custom, this is our tradition and culture. Halal and kosher slaughter does not allow the stunning of animals before they are killed. Animal rights campaigners, as Doug says, say this is barbaric, this is outdated, this is cruel. Your religious customs should not be prioritised ahead of the welfare of animals. So, I mean, do you think there needs to be tougher action against the slaughter of animals for halal and kosher meat? Or do you think Michael Gove's right to say that's divisive? One Labour MP says it's a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle attack on religious minorities. Is this an unfair kind of suggestion that would disproportionately affect Muslims and Jews? Well, yeah, of course it would disproportionately affect. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea, does it? See if we get Doug back on a better line and just turn at the time 11:45.
LBC this morning on Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Ed Miliband, Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. I hear what you're trying to do with energy bills. We've got security blocks on chocolate and cheese. What are the government doing about that?
Ever since the financial crisis of 2008, people have been facing a long-term affordability crisis.
Do you know the price of a Mars bar?
I'm not going to get into a quiz questions with you.
Politicians are so removed from reality.
I'm not going to do the Nick Ferrari quiz, I'm afraid.
Politicians are removed from reality.
I know the reality reality that people face.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
A Southern train is a place where you can have more me time. A chance to skip traffic and glide to wherever you need to be. With headspace to focus on more important matters. Like if that cloud is a starfish or sunflower. Fast journeys without the rush with great deals at southernrailway.com. Terms apply.
With over 50 years' experience, at Fidelity, we believe there's a difference between investing and being invested. Investing is having access to guidance, tools and expert insights. Being invested means feeling confident about your future. Investing is choosing from a wealth of investment options. Being invested means focusing on your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions or advice, be truly invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
The Hillary sale ends soon, so get window-wise and grab these amazing offers while you still can. Like up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, grab £50 off your electric blind order and conveniently control your blinds for less. And don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. But hurry, the Hillary sale ends on the 9th of March. Conditions apply.
My name's Mark, and this is my ETS2. The sensation in my neck was painful all the time. Once I spoke to my GP, they referred me to my CBT. They got me in very, very quickly. The amount of pain I went through for something so easy, why haven't I done this 4 months before?
The government is opening new community diagnostic centres, with many already available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so the NHS can be there for all of us when we need it. Find your closest one at gov.uk/NHS Fit for the Future, available England-wide.
Get extra support with Immunase multivitamins with vitamin D, zinc and selenium, which contribute to the normal function of the immune system. Immunase from Vitabiotics, the UK's #1 vitamin company. Verification at vitabiotics.com. From Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
Fly into flip-flop mode. There's not long left to get up to £500 off package holidays in EasyJet's Big Orange Sale. Plus, get up to 20% off flights. EasyJet. Get out there. Selected dates and flights. Sale ends 3rd of March. Holidays, min, spend and ATOL protected. T's and C's apply.
Ben Kentish on LBC. Text 84850.
11:49 is the time. Back to your calls on student loans and that scandal in just a moment. First, we've got Doug Moore back on a phone line, I think. Doug's a vegan advocate, nutritionist, former slaughterhouse worker. We're talking about proposals for meat from animals that haven't been stunned before they were killed to be labelled as such. Doug, you were saying that actually that's not the point because you don't think animals should be killed at all. I take your point on that. Do you have more of a problem, though, with animals that are being killed that haven't been stunned compared to those that have been?
No, I don't, because I've worked in slaughterhouses and on farms where both methods are used, and my experience has shown me that animals suffer extensively as a consequence of their breeding, herding, transportation, housing, handling, stunning and killing. And you're actually introducing an extra element where you have stunning, because it doesn't always work, and it's quite often quite a horrific thing to witness.
So sorry, Doug, would your view be that the kosher and halal methods of killing animals aren't actually any more cruel than others?
That's exactly it. I don't think that the issue of cruelty should come into it. I think the issue is that they're having their lives taken.
See you tomorrow when you cannot avoid. But before to end,
Our labelled meat was actually killed with stunning. Right. So the two shouldn't be conflated, first of all.
So when I said halal meat can't be stunned, that's wrong,
true.
Doug, is it? Kosher meat can't be stunned.
That may be true, but certainly not true with halal.
Right. So it's a bit of a distraction, do you think?
I think it is, and it's no coincidence. Estimates that they have history of raising things that can be controversial and timing them in such a way. It's no coincidence to me that we're currently going through the month of Ramadan.
So what you think you see sort of Islamophobia in some of this conversation?
I think it is. That's exactly what I think it is.
Even though, you know, animal rights groups like the RSPCA and others have been raising the issue of non-slung slaughter for quite a while?
Firstly, the RSPCA have never been an animal rights group. They're a welfarist group. They promote methods of killing piglets that include thumping, which is smashing their skulls on a concrete floor. They are not an animal rights group and never have been.
But other animal campaigners as well have been warning about the consequences of non-slung slaughter. I mean, that's not motivated by anti-Muslim sentiment, presumably.
No. I mean, I think there's a misconception there. It's all about language. So these people are talking about welfare. So to me, it's irrelevant welfare. It's about use, not abuse. So it's about justice and rights violations, and not about cruelty and things like that.
All right, appreciate your time. Thanks very much for coming on. Doug Moore, vegan advocate, nutritionist, and a former slaughterhouse worker as well. Let me know your thoughts on that. You know, when animal rights campaigners, and they do, in their droves, say this method of killing animals is cruel. It's cruel that it needs to be. Do you think there should be a crackdown on it by the government? Or would that be an unfair attack on people's religious freedoms? 03456060973 for your calls and your WhatsApps on that. It's 84850 for the text. This comes in from Keith on the issue of student loans. Ben, cry me a river about student debt. I'm 72. When I tried to get into uni in 1970, I didn't succeed because only 8.5% of students were able to because of a lack of space. Great. Free to go, but only for 8.5%. Now it's more like 50%. Yeah, fine, Keith. More people going to university. Is that grounds